Hey there, and welcome to Crime for Sleep. I know you're having trouble falling asleep, so let me keep you company with true crime stories from around the world. Before we dive in, I'm curious, where did you first hear this one? If you enjoy these stories, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Now get comfortable, and let's get into tonight's case. Crime 1. When she bought the property, the realtor warned her the backyard shed hadn't been opened in years. When she finally pried the door loose, she found a dusty crib in the center of the room, perfectly made, taped to one of the slats, "No crying this time." Emily Harlow had moved to Millfield, Connecticut in the early spring of 2018. A 32-year-old library archivist from Boston, she had inherited enough money from her grandmother to afford a quaint two-bedroom colonial on Maple Street. The charming yellow house with its white picket fence and mature oak trees felt like the perfect place to start over after her divorce. The previous owners were an elderly couple, the realtor, Mrs. Brennan, had explained while showing Emily around the property. They moved to Florida about 5 years ago to be closer to their grandchildren. The house has been rented out since then, but the last tenants left about 8 months ago. As they walked through the sunlit kitchen with its original hardwood floors, Mrs. Brennan hesitated near the back door. "I should mention there's a shed in the backyard that hasn't been opened in quite some time. The lock is rusted shut, and the previous owners never provided a key. They said it was just filled with old gardening tools, nothing worth mentioning in the listing." Emily had barely given it a second thought. The house itself, with its built-in bookshelves and window seats, had already captured her heart. The paperwork was signed within a week, and by mid-April, Emily had settled into her new home, arranging her extensive book collection and hanging family photographs on freshly painted walls. For the first 2 months, Emily paid little attention to the weathered shed that stood at the far corner of her backyard. Spring had turned to summer, and she spent her weekends planting a small vegetable garden and getting to know her neighbors. The Hendersons next door, a middle-aged couple with teenage twins, had lived in Millfield their entire lives. Across the street was Mrs. Patel, a retired schoolteacher who brought Emily homemade curry and local gossip on Sunday afternoons. "Did you know," Mrs. Patel mentioned over tea one day, "that your house was once owned by the Crawfords? Lovely family. They had a daughter about your age, I believe." The realtor mentioned an elderly couple, Emily replied, stirring honey into her tea. "Oh no, dear, the Martins were the elderly couple. They bought the house from the Crawfords back in. Must have been 1993 or 94. The Crawfords moved rather suddenly, if I recall correctly." It was a casual conversation, one that Emily would revisit in her mind many times in the months to come. July arrived with a stifling heat wave. Emily, determined to make the most of her yard, decided it was finally time to tackle the shed. Perhaps she could convert it into a reading nook or a potting station for her growing interest in gardening. Armed with WD-40 and a pair of bolt cutters borrowed from Mr. Henderson, she approached the structure on a humid Saturday morning. The shed was smaller than she had initially thought, perhaps 8 feet by 10 feet, with a slanted roof and a single window covered in decades of grime. The wooden siding had once been painted green, but years of New England winters had stripped away most of the color. Vines crept up the sides, and the door, once white, was now a mottled gray. The rusted padlock gave way after several minutes of persistent effort. The door resisted at first, swollen from years of humidity, but finally yielded with a low, plaintive creak that seemed to Emily unnaturally loud in the quiet of her backyard. The air that escaped from the shed was stale and carried a faint, unidentifiable odor. Emily stepped back, allowing sunlight to penetrate the darkness within. As her eyes adjusted, the shape in the center of the room became clear. A wooden crib, its white paint yellowed with age but otherwise in perfect condition. It stood in the middle of the floor as if placed there with purpose. The crib was made up with faded yellow sheets and a small quilt decorated with teddy bears. A mobile with wooden stars hung motionless above. There were no other furnishings in the shed, no gardening tools, no storage boxes, nothing to suggest the space had ever been used for anything else. Emily stepped closer, a strange heaviness settling in her chest. That was when she noticed the small piece of paper taped to one of the slats. Written in neat, deliberate handwriting were the words, "No crying this time." She backed out of the shed, her heart racing, and called the police. Detective Marcus Reeves arrived within 30 minutes. A tall man with salt and pepper hair and tired eyes, he had been with the Millfield Police Department for 20 years. He listened carefully as Emily recounted finding the crib and showed him the note. "And you've only owned the property for a few months?" he asked, jotting notes in a small black notebook. "Since April," Emily confirmed. "The realtor told me the shed was just full of old gardening tools." Detective Reeves examined the crib carefully, taking photographs with his phone. "This doesn't look like it's been here for decades," he observed. "There's dust, yes, but the materials aren't degraded enough. I'd say this has been here for years, not decades." He carefully removed the note, placing it in an evidence bag. "I'm going to run a background check on the previous owners and see what we can find out about this property's history. In the meantime, I'd advise you not to disturb anything else in here." As Detective Reeves made phone calls from his car, Emily sat on her back porch trying to make sense of what she had found. The crib seemed so deliberately placed, like a stage set waiting for actors. In that note, those 5 words carried a weight that made her shiver despite the summer heat. The investigation into the crib began quietly. Detective Reeves returned the following day with a crime scene technician who took samples from the shed and photographed every inch of the crib. They found no fingerprints aside from Emily's on the door and lock. The note yielded no useful forensic evidence. The paper was common printer stock, and the ink appeared to be from a standard ballpoint pen. Mrs. Patel mentioned the house was owned by a family named Crawford before the elderly couple, Emily told Detective Reeves. She said they moved suddenly in the early 90s. This information led to the first real break in the case. County records showed that Thomas and Diane Crawford had indeed owned the house from 1989 to 1993. They had a daughter, Jessica, who would now be in her mid-30s. Further digging revealed a police report from December 1992. The Crawfords had reported their second child, a 6-month-old boy named Michael, missing from his crib. According to the yellowed newspaper articles that Emily later found in the library archives, the investigation had focused initially on the parents. No signs of forced entry were found, and neighbors reported hearing no disturbances on the night of the disappearance. The case had gripped Millfield for months, with volunteers combing the nearby woods and police questioning everyone who had contact with the family. Then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the story disappeared from the papers. The Crawfords moved away in the summer of 1993, selling their house to the Martins at a price well below market value. Baby Michael was never found. Detective Reeves arranged interviews with former neighbors and police officers who had worked the original case. Most remembered the incident vaguely, a tragedy from long ago that had faded into local lore. People said things about the Crawfords after they left, Mrs. Patel told Emily and Detective Reeves over tea one afternoon. Terrible things. Some believed they had something to do with the baby's disappearance. Others thought they were protecting Jessica. She was only 7 at the time, but there were rumors she was troubled. "Do you know where the Crawfords went?" Emily asked. Mrs. Patel shook her head. "West somewhere, Oregon perhaps. Diane had family there, I believe." 2 months into the investigation, Detective Reeves located Thomas Crawford living in a small apartment in Portland, Oregon. His wife had passed away from cancer in 2007. Jessica, now Jessica Bennett, lived in Seattle with her husband and 2 children. There had been no other children after Michael. Thomas Crawford's voice trembled when Detective Reeves called. "We never had a shed," he insisted. "There was no outbuilding on that property when we lived there. The Martins must have built it after they bought the house from us." But county records showed no permits for additional structures during the Martins' ownership. When contacted in their Florida retirement community, the elderly couple confirmed they had never used the shed, assuming it contained only the previous owner's abandoned possessions. "We never even opened it," Mrs. Martin admitted. "After what happened in that house, we just wanted to move forward." Jessica Crawford Bennett agreed to DNA testing, which matched samples taken from the crib's bedding. The mobile hanging above the crib yielded partial fingerprints that matched those on file for Diane Crawford, taken during the original investigation. "But that doesn't make sense," Emily said when Detective Reeves shared this information. "If the Crawfords say there was no shed, how did their baby's crib end up there? And that note?" The most disturbing discovery came in late September, when ground-penetrating radar revealed a small anomaly beneath the shed's floorboards. Carefully removing the planks, investigators found a metal box containing a baby's booty, a pacifier, and a hospital identification bracelet bearing the name Michael Crawford. There were no human remains. The case took an unexpected turn when Jessica Crawford Bennett arrived in Millfield, insisting on seeing the shed for herself. A tall woman with tired eyes much like Detective Reeves, she stood in the doorway of the structure, her face unreadable. "My brother didn't disappear," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "He died, SIDS. My parents were devastated, especially my mother. She couldn't accept it. She kept saying he was still alive, still crying in the night." Jessica turned to Emily, tears streaming down her face. "There was no shed. We buried his things in the backyard. It was my mother's idea, a sort of memorial. My father built the shed over the spot after she tried to take my cousin's baby, claiming it was Michael. That's when we moved away." The note, Jessica explained, had been written by her mother in the throes of her delusion. She used to write notes to herself, reminders about the new Michael. No crying this time, no midnight feedings, no colic. But Jessica's account contradicted the timeline established by property records and building permits. The shed appeared in aerial photographs taken in 1991, a full year before Michael's birth, and Thomas Crawford's fingerprints, when finally obtained and analyzed, didn't match any found in the shed. As winter settled over Millfield, the investigation reached an impasse. The crib remained in police custody, the note analyzed and reanalyzed by forensic specialists. Emily, unable to forget what she had found, began researching the history of her property further, digging through town records that predated the Crawfords. What she discovered was that in the 1950s, a small wooden structure, possibly a playhouse, had stood in approximately the same location as the shed. The property had changed hands numerous times between then and the Crawfords' purchase, with each family adding their own chapter to the house's story. Detective Reeves eventually closed the official investigation, filing it as an unusual but ultimately explainable case, a family's tragic attempt to process grief, their memories distorted by time and trauma. But Emily knew there were still pieces missing. Why would the Crawfords deny the shed's existence? How did the crib end up there if, as Jessica claimed, they had buried Michael's things before building over them? And most troubling of all, if the note was written by Diane Crawford during her mental decline, why was it taped to the crib decades after they had moved away? Emily continues to live in the yellow house on Maple Street. The shed has been demolished, the ground beneath it carefully excavated and searched. Nothing more was found. She planted a small garden in its place, lavender and forget-me-nots that bloom every spring. Sometimes on quiet nights, Emily thinks she hears a sound carried on the wind, not quite a cry, not quite a whisper. A reminder, perhaps, that some mysteries are never fully solved, that some stories have no satisfying conclusion, that sometimes the most haunting questions are the ones that remain unanswered. In Millfield, Connecticut, people still talk about the Crawford baby and the crib in the locked shed. They tell different versions of the story, each one shaped by time and imagination, but they all end the same way, with a perfectly made crib, yellow with age, and a note promising, "No crying this time." Crime 2, the hiker thought it was just a pile of disturbed earth until they saw a hand. When police arrived, they dug up a shallow grave. The body was too decomposed to recognize, but in the jacket pocket was a driver's license with her photo, her name, and the wrong date of birth. It was early October in the township of Maple Creek, Massachusetts, where the fall colors had just begun their dramatic transformation. The air carried that distinctive chill that signals the changing of seasons, not quite winter, but no longer summer. James Thornton, a 42-year-old accountant and weekend hiker, had taken the day off to explore a new trail in the Blackwater Nature Preserve, a densely wooded area about 30 minutes from his suburban home. The preserve was less frequented than other hiking spots in the region. Its paths were not well maintained, and the terrain was challenging enough to deter casual walkers. James preferred it this way. The solitude of these lesser-known trails offered him an escape from the meticulous precision required in his day-to-day work. 3 miles into his hike, James ventured slightly off-trail to photograph a particularly vibrant patch of autumn foliage. That's when he noticed it, a rectangular depression in the earth, about 6 feet long and 3 feet wide. The soil appeared freshly disturbed, with no leaf cover despite the surrounding ground being blanketed in fallen leaves. At first, he thought perhaps it was the work of park rangers or conservationists, but something about the scene felt wrong. As he approached to investigate, the toe of his hiking boot struck something partially buried at the edge of the depression. Bending down, James brushed away a thin layer of soil to reveal what he initially thought was a pale, dirty glove. The realization came slowly, then all at once, he was looking at human fingers extending from the earth. Detective Sarah Reeves was finishing paperwork when the call came in at 11:43 a.m. At 52, she had spent 27 years with the Maple Creek Police Department, the last 15 in homicide. She had seen many things in her career, but the scene that awaited her at Blackwater would linger in her memory longer than most. The body was buried in a hurry, the medical examiner, Dr. Elias Cohen, informed Detective Reeves as they stood beside the now fully excavated grave. Shallow digging, no attempt to use lime or other substances to accelerate decomposition. Whoever did this wasn't planning ahead. The victim was female, estimated to be in her 30s or early 40s, wearing hiking clothes, sturdy boots, cargo pants, and a weatherproof jacket with multiple pockets. Her face was unrecognizable due to decomposition and suspected animal activity, but her dark hair was still intact, gathered in what had once been a neat braid. Time of death, Reeves asked, her breath visible in the cool air. Based on decomposition, I'd estimate 3 to 4 weeks ago, late September possibly. I'll know more after the autopsy. It was while photographing the scene that Officer Taylor Nguyen made the discovery. In the right pocket of the victim's jacket was a Massachusetts driver's license belonging to Melissa Drayden, 37, with an address in Somerville, about 40 miles from where they now stood. This makes identification easier, Reeves remarked, studying the license through its evidence bag. The photo showed a woman with similar features to what they could discern of the victim, dark hair, oval face, but something caught the detective's attention. The date of birth on this license, she said, pointing to the information printed on the card. September 14, 1988. That would make her 36, not 37. Typo at the DMV, Nguyen suggested. Maybe, Reeves replied, but her instincts, honed over decades of investigation, told her otherwise. Let's run the name and check the address, and I want dental records for comparison. Back at the station, the investigation began taking shape around the identity of Melissa Drayden. According to records, she lived alone in a one-bedroom apartment in Somerville and worked as a graphic designer for a marketing firm in Boston. Her employer reported that she had taken vacation time starting September 18th and was expected back on the 30th but never returned. No missing persons report had been filed. People assumed she extended her vacation, explained Thomas Reed, Melissa's supervisor. It wasn't completely out of character. She'd done similar things before, gone hiking or camping, and stayed longer than planned when she was enjoying herself. We were annoyed but not alarmed. Detective Reeves and Officer Nguyen visited Melissa's apartment the next day. The landlord let them in with a master key. Inside, everything was in order, disturbingly so. The bed was made, dishes washed and put away, plants watered. There were no signs of a struggle or hasty departure. It looked as though Melissa had prepared her home for a temporary absence, expecting to return. On her refrigerator was a handwritten note, "Call Mom, birthday." Next to it hung a small calendar with September 19th circled in red. Her mother's birthday, perhaps, Nguyen suggested. When they contacted Melissa's mother, Alina Drayden, in her home in Vermont, they encountered the first major inconsistency in the case. "My birthday is in April," Mrs. Drayden said, her voice trembling slightly over the phone. "And Melissa was born on March 22nd, 1987, not September 14th, 1988, as you're telling me her license says." The detective's suspicions deepened. "Mrs. Drayden, when was the last time you spoke with your daughter?" "About 5 weeks ago. She mentioned she was planning a hiking trip but didn't say where. That wasn't unusual. Melissa loved the outdoors and often took solo trips." There was a pause on the line. "Detective, is my daughter dead?" Reeves confirmed the worst, though she withheld details about the condition in which Melissa had been found. Mrs. Drayden broke down in sobs, and when she regained her composure, she added something that added another layer to the mystery. "Detective, there's something you should know. Melissa had a twin sister, Madison. They were identical. Madison died 10 years ago in a car accident." 2 days later, the medical examiner's preliminary report revealed that the cause of death was likely blunt force trauma to the back of the skull. The victim had been struck with considerable force by an object with a rounded edge. Dr. Cohen also noted defensive wounds on the hands and forearms, suggesting she had fought her attacker. Most importantly, dental records confirmed that the body was indeed Melissa Drayden, but the discrepancies in her identification remained unexplained. Detective Reeves decided to dig deeper into Melissa's background. She discovered that following her sister's death, Melissa had undergone therapy for depression and complicated grief. According to her therapist's notes, which were subpoenaed as part of the investigation, Melissa had expressed feelings of survivor's guilt and occasionally mentioned that the wrong twin died. Further investigation of Melissa's finances revealed something unusual. She had withdrawn $10,000 in cash from her savings account 3 days before her vacation began. The bank teller who processed the transaction remembered Melissa because of the size of the withdrawal. She seemed nervous, the teller, Linda Parker, recalled. Not like someone excited about a vacation, more like someone afraid. A search of Melissa's laptop found in her apartment uncovered searches for information about identity theft, changing one's name legally, and relocating to Canada. There were also several email exchanges with someone using the address newlife@privateemail.com. The emails were cryptic but suggested arrangements for a meeting. The most recent email, dated September 17th, read simply, Blackwater, North Trail, September 20th, 2 p.m. Bring everything as discussed. On a hunch, Detective Reeves examined Madison Drayden's death certificate and discovered another anomaly. While the certificate existed, the coroner who had supposedly signed it had no record of performing the examination. Additionally, the funeral home listed had closed 2 years before Madison's alleged death. "Are we looking at a faked death?" Nguyen asked during their case review. "Could Madison be alive and the woman we found is actually her, not Melissa?" Or, Reeves countered, what if Melissa was planning to assume Madison's identity, take the cash, meet someone who could provide new documentation, and disappear? Maybe someone who didn't want that to happen caught up with her. As they continued to investigate, another significant piece of evidence emerged. A review of traffic cameras near the preserve entrance on September 20th showed Melissa's car arriving at 1:45 p.m. 17 minutes later, another vehicle, a dark blue sedan, entered the same lot. The driver's face wasn't visible, but the build suggested a male of average height and weight. Both vehicles left the parking area approximately 3 hours later, with the blue sedan departing first, followed by Melissa's car 4 minutes afterward. But the person driving Melissa's vehicle was wearing a hooded jacket that obscured their face from the camera. Someone else drove her car out, Reeves noted. She never left that forest alive. A break in the case came when forensic analysis of the soil from the grave site revealed traces of a distinctive boot print with a partial manufacturer's logo visible in one impression. The pattern matched a high-end hiking boot sold primarily in specialty outdoor stores. Police canvassed such retailers within a 100-mile radius, showing photos of both Melissa and the blue sedan. At the third store in Burlington, an employee recognized the car. "That looks like Peter Walsh's vehicle," the clerk said. "He's a regular customer, comes in for gear every few months." Peter Walsh was a 39-year-old wilderness guide who operated small group hiking expeditions throughout New England. His record showed a restraining order filed against him 3 years earlier by an ex-girlfriend who claimed harassment after their breakup, though the order had eventually expired without renewal. When police arrived at Walsh's cabin in rural New Hampshire, they found it empty but recently occupied. On the kitchen table was a bus ticket to Montreal, dated the previous day. Canadian authorities were alerted, and Walsh was apprehended while attempting to cross the border. During questioning, Walsh initially denied knowing Melissa Drayden, but when confronted with evidence placing his vehicle at the preserve, his story changed. He admitted to meeting her, but claimed she was alive when they parted ways. "She hired me as a guide for her solo trip," he explained. "She was paying cash well above my usual rate. She said she needed someone who knew hidden trails, places where she wouldn't run into other hikers." When asked why Melissa would need such secluded locations, Walsh hesitated before answering. She said she was practicing for something. She had this weird request. She wanted me to call her Madison during our hikes. Said it was part of some psychological exercise her therapist recommended. As the interrogation continued, Walsh's account became increasingly contradictory. He couldn't explain why he fled to Canada or why he initially lied about knowing Melissa. A search of his cabin yielded the final piece of evidence, a rock with traces of blood and hair matching Melissa's DNA, hidden in a crawl space beneath the floorboards. Ultimately, Walsh confessed to killing Melissa, though he claimed it was unintentional, the result of an argument that escalated when he realized she was planning to steal her dead sister's identity and disappear. According to Walsh, Melissa had hired him not just as a guide, but as an accomplice, offering to pay him to help stage her own disappearance. She wanted to become Madison, he said during his confession. She had been planning it for years. The driver's license with the wrong birth date was just the beginning. She had created a whole new history for herself as Madison. She said she couldn't be Melissa anymore, that Melissa should have been the one who died 10 years ago. The investigation revealed that Madison hadn't died in an accident as records suggested. The sisters had conspired to fake Madison's death for insurance money, which they had split. Madison had been living under an assumed name in Seattle ever since. When police located her, she broke down and admitted everything, revealing that she had been blackmailing Melissa for years. The case of the woman buried with her ID turned out to be more complex than anyone could have imagined. A twisted tale of identical twins, stolen identities, and a decade-long deception that ultimately led to murder in the quiet woods of Blackwater Preserve. For the residents of Maple Creek, the case left an uneasy feeling. The hiking trails of Blackwater, once appreciated for their solitude, now carried whispers of deception and death. Detective Reeves would later reflect that in her decades of solving homicides, few cases had illustrated so clearly how the lines between victim and perpetrator could blur, or how the human capacity for deception of others and of oneself could lead to such tragic ends. As for the driver's license found in the pocket of the dead woman, it remained a symbol of the case's central question. Who was the woman in the grave really trying to be? Crime 3, it came through her baby monitor, soft and strained, checked the basement behind the furnace. She hadn't told anyone what she'd hidden there, but when she checked, the box was gone and in its place was a note. "I kept your secret, now you keep mine." Rebecca Whalen had always been a creature of habit. Growing up in the quiet suburb of Lakewood, Minnesota, she was known for her methodical approach to life. Her childhood bedroom was arranged with precision, books aligned by height, clothes sorted by color. This orderliness followed her into adulthood, where she found comfort in routines and predictability. By 32, Rebecca had built the life she had always imagined: a successful career as a dental hygienist, a modest but charming two-story colonial home on Evergreen Avenue, a marriage to Michael, her college sweetheart who worked as an IT specialist at the local community college, and most precious of all, their daughter Emma, now 14 months old. The Whalens were what neighbors called pleasantly reserved. They attended neighborhood barbecues but rarely hosted. They exchanged polite waves and small talk but kept to themselves. Nobody really knew them beyond surface-level pleasantries. Detective Sarah Novick would later tell colleagues that this privacy might have been what made Rebecca vulnerable. "When nobody knows your business," she would say, "nobody notices when something's wrong." The first unusual occurrence happened on a Tuesday in March. Rebecca was folding laundry in the master bedroom while Emma napped down the hall. The baby monitor on her nightstand suddenly emitted a burst of static, followed by what sounded like a whisper. Rebecca dismissed it as interference. 2 days later, while Emma slept, the monitor crackled again. This time, Rebecca clearly heard a voice, not her daughter's babbling, but an adult voice whispering, "I can see what you did." Rebecca froze. She rushed to Emma's room, finding her daughter peacefully asleep. She checked the windows, the closets, under the crib. Nothing. She convinced herself it was a crossed signal from another monitor in the neighborhood. But the following week it happened again. Check the basement, behind the furnace. The voice was barely audible, a strained whisper. Rebecca's heart pounded wildly. 5 months earlier, in a moment of desperation, she had hidden something behind the basement furnace, a small wooden box containing evidence of a mistake she believed no one knew about. The affair had been brief, meaningless, a lapse in judgment with a colleague that ended as quickly as it began. But she had kept the notes, the hotel key card, a few photographs. She couldn't bring herself to destroy them, but couldn't risk Michael finding them either. With trembling legs, Rebecca descended the basement stairs. The air felt colder than usual as she approached the furnace. When she reached behind it, her fingers found empty space. The box was gone. In its place was a handwritten note. "I kept your secret. Now you keep mine." That night, Michael noticed something was wrong. "You've barely touched your dinner," he said, concern evident in his voice. "Just tired," Rebecca replied, forcing a smile. The next day, Rebecca received a text message from an unknown number. "Look under Emma's mattress." Her hands shaking, Rebecca lifted her daughter's mattress. There, she found a USB drive. That evening, after Michael left for his weekly basketball game and Emma was asleep, Rebecca plugged the drive into her laptop. It contained a single video file. The footage showed their backyard, filmed from what appeared to be their garden shed. It was dated 3 months ago. In the video, a figure, not clearly visible, was digging a small hole near the oak tree, placing something inside, then covering it carefully. Rebecca didn't recall anyone digging in their yard. Neither she nor Michael had buried anything there. The following morning, Rebecca called in sick to work. While Emma played in her playpen, Rebecca went to the oak tree. The soil had been recently disturbed. She began to dig with a garden trowel, stopping when she uncovered a plastic bag. Inside was a woman's silver bracelet engraved with the name Meredith. Rebecca didn't know anyone named Meredith. That afternoon, the baby monitor spoke again while Emma napped. "Did you find her bracelet? Meredith loved that bracelet." Rebecca called the police. Detective Sarah Novick arrived within the hour, a tall woman with shrewd eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. Rebecca explained everything: the voices, the missing box, the USB drive, the bracelet. She left out only what had been in her box. Detective Novak examined the bracelet and took the USB drive. "I'll need to take a statement and process these items," she said. "In the meantime, do you have somewhere you and your daughter can stay?" Rebecca called her sister in Minneapolis. By evening, she and Emma were settled in her sister's guest room, while Michael, bewildered by the sudden turn of events, agreed to stay with a friend until things were clearer. 2 days later, Detective Novak called. "We've identified the bracelet," she said, her voice grave. "It belonged to Meredith Connor, a 28-year-old woman who disappeared 8 months ago. Her case has been open with no substantial leads." Rebecca felt dizzy. "What does this mean? Why was it in my yard?" "That's what we need to figure out. We're getting a warrant to search your property more thoroughly." The search revealed nothing further, but forensic analysis of the USB drive yielded something troubling. The metadata showed it had been created using Michael's personal laptop. When confronted, Michael appeared genuinely confused. He insisted he knew nothing about Meredith Connor or the bracelet. He had never buried anything in their yard. He suggested someone might have accessed his laptop without his knowledge, possibly when he left it in his office during lunch breaks. Rebecca wanted to believe him, yet doubt had taken root. The investigation revealed that Meredith Connor had worked part-time at the community college library. She would have crossed paths with Michael. When detectives examined Michael's work schedule against Meredith's disappearance, they found he had called in sick the day she vanished. As weeks passed, Rebecca and Emma remained at her sister's home. The baby monitor stayed unplugged, stored in a drawer. Yet one night, Rebecca's phone lit up with a text. "I miss talking to you through Emma's monitor. We had such nice conversations." The message came from Michael's number. When police went to question Michael again, they found his friend's apartment empty. Michael had left 3 days earlier, saying he needed to clear his head. His car was discovered abandoned at a bus station. In Rebecca's next session with Detective Novak, she finally revealed what had been in her hidden box. The detective listened without judgment, assuring her that her affair was irrelevant to the investigation. "Whoever did this," Novak explained, "used your secret to manipulate you, to make you afraid, to establish control." 6 months passed. Michael remained missing. The case of Meredith Connor stayed open, with Michael now the primary suspect. Rebecca and Emma eventually moved back to their house, though Rebecca could never bring herself to go into the basement alone. The baby monitor remained unplugged, but sometimes Rebecca would wake in the night, certain she had heard a whisper through the silent device. On those nights, she would check on Emma, then sit by her daughter's crib until morning, watching the windows, listening for footsteps. 1 year after the first whisper came through the monitor, Rebecca received a package with no return address. Inside was her wooden box, its contents untouched. Attached was a note. "Some secrets are better forgotten. I've kept mine. Thank you for keeping yours." The case remains unsolved. Meredith Connor has never been found. Michael Whalen is still missing. Detective Novak still drives by the house on Evergreen Avenue occasionally. She watches the quiet colonial with its neatly trimmed lawn, wondering about the secrets it still holds. And sometimes, when she passes, she sees Rebecca at the window, looking out as if waiting for something or someone to return. Behind her, always within arm's reach, is Emma, now a toddler who has learned to whisper her first words. Crime 4, she cleaned the bathroom the day before, every tile spotless. but now there was a handprint smeared on the mirror and two droplets leading to the hallway. She followed them to her bedroom closet. Inside, the air was cold and the smell metallic. Marion Collins had always been particular about cleanliness. Friends would joke that you could eat off her bathroom floor, though no one would ever dare try. At 42, she lived alone in her modest two-bedroom home in Oak Ridge, Pennsylvania, a quiet suburb where neighbors knew each other by name but respected the unwritten rule of maintaining polite distance. Every Sunday morning followed the same ritual: coffee at 6, followed by a thorough cleaning of the entire house. It was therapeutic for her, a way to prepare for the week ahead. As an accountant at a local firm, Marion found comfort in order and predictability. Her colleagues described her as reserved but kind, someone who remembered birthdays and brought homemade cookies during the holidays. That Sunday in October started like any other. The autumn air was crisp, and the maple trees lining her street had begun their transformation into fiery hues of orange and red. Marion had finished scrubbing her bathroom to perfection before noon. The white tiles gleamed under the recessed lighting. The chrome fixtures reflected her satisfied smile as she put away her cleaning supplies. Monday morning arrived with the gentle hum of her alarm clock at 5:30 a.m. Marion followed her usual routine, stretching in bed for exactly 2 minutes before slipping her feet into the slippers that waited perfectly aligned on the floor. She padded to the bathroom, reaching for the light switch with practiced precision. The fluorescent light flickered on, revealing what shouldn't have been there. A handprint, reddish-brown, smeared across the mirror she had polished just yesterday. Marion froze, her breath caught somewhere between her lungs and throat. Her mind catalogued possibilities. Had she cut herself without noticing? Had she somehow missed this during cleaning? Neither seemed possible. Then she noticed the droplets, two distinct spots on the white tile leading toward the hallway. With a racing heart, Marion followed them, her slippers making soft shuffling sounds against the hardwood floor. The trail led to her bedroom closet, the door slightly ajar when she distinctly remembered closing it. Standing before the closet door, Marion noticed the temperature drop. It was colder here, as if someone had left a window open, though all were closed. She reached for the doorknob, her fingers trembling slightly. As she pulled it open wider, the metallic smell hit her, unmistakable and primal: blood. But the closet appeared empty at first glance. Her clothes hung in their color-coordinated sections. Her shoes lined up in pairs below. Nothing seemed disturbed until her eyes traveled upward to the shelf above the hanging rod. There, pushed against the wall, was a small wooden box she didn't recognize. Detective James Harmon arrived at 7:22 a.m. after Marion's shaking voice had guided the 911 dispatcher through what she had found. At 55, Harmon had seen enough in his 30 years with the Oak Ridge Police Department to approach each case with measured caution. His salt and pepper hair and steady gaze gave witnesses a sense of reassurance that Marion desperately needed. "And you're certain this box isn't yours?" Harmon asked, his pen hovering above his notepad as they stood in her living room. The wooden box sat on the coffee table between them, now sealed in an evidence bag. "I've never seen it before in my life," Marion replied, her voice steadier now, but her hands still clutching her coffee mug too tightly. "And I definitely didn't put that." She gestured toward the handprint that technicians were now photographing in her bathroom, on my mirror. Inside the box, forensics had found a single item: a photograph of a young woman, maybe in her 20s, standing in front of a lake. The image was faded, suggesting it was several decades old. The woman was smiling, unaware that someday her picture would be placed in a strange box, in a strange closet, surrounded by the scent of blood. "Do you recognize her?" Harmon had asked, showing Marion the photograph. She had shaken her head. The woman was a stranger to her. Over the next few days, Marion stayed with her sister in neighboring Westbrook. Her home had become an active crime scene, with technicians meticulously examining every inch. The blood on the mirror and floor had been human, but initial tests showed no match in any database. The photograph remained unidentified. Neighbors were questioned. Had anyone seen unusual activity around Marion's home on Sunday? Mrs. Peterson next door mentioned a dark sedan parked across the street in the afternoon, but she couldn't recall the make or model. "I just thought it was someone visiting the Hendersons," she explained, referring to the family 3 houses down. 10 days into the investigation, Detective Harmon received the first break in the case. The fingerprints lifted from the wooden box matched those of a man named Trevor Dawson, arrested for petty theft in 1998, but with no criminal record since. Harmon tracked him to an apartment in downtown Oak Ridge. Dawson, now in his 50s with thinning hair and nervous eyes, denied any knowledge of the box. "I haven't broken into anyone's home," he insisted when Harmon questioned him. "I've been clean for years. I work at the library now. You can ask anyone there." His alibi for Sunday checked out. Security footage showed him at work until closing, then at a friend's birthday dinner until nearly midnight. It seemed impossible that he could have planted the box in Marion's closet. "But those are definitely your fingerprints," Harmon pressed. Dawson's face paled. "There was a box, similar to what you described, years ago. It belonged to my grandmother. I haven't seen it since she died in 1992. When shown the photograph of the young woman, Dawson's hands began to tremble. "That's her. That's my grandmother, Ruth, taken at Lake Champlain around 1955. The investigation took an unexpected turn. How had a box containing a photograph of Dawson's long-deceased grandmother ended up in Marion Collins' closet, accompanied by blood that matched no known person? Marion was permitted to return home after 2 weeks, though she did so reluctantly. Nothing had been stolen, nothing else had been disturbed, yet something fundamentally sacred had been violated: her sense of safety, her belief in the orderliness of her world. She hired a cleaning service to sanitize the bathroom, unable to face the task herself. She installed a security system with cameras monitoring every entrance. She replaced the closet door with a new one that had a deadbolt lock. Still, sleep became elusive. 3 months passed. Winter settled over Oak Ridge, covering yards and rooftops with a blanket of snow. The investigation had stalled. The blood remained unidentified. Marion had begun to adjust to her new normal, a life punctuated by double-checking locks and startling at unexpected sounds. Then came the letter. No return address, no postmark. Just an envelope slipped under her front door one morning in January. Inside was a single sheet of paper with typed text. "Ruth knew what happened to Anna, now so do you." Detective Harmon immediately connected Anna to an unsolved case from 1992, the same year Ruth Dawson, Trevor's grandmother, had died. Anna Fletcher, 23, had disappeared after leaving her job at Oak Ridge General Hospital. Her car was found abandoned at a rest stop along Interstate 79, but Anna herself was never located. "Did Ruth Dawson work at the hospital?" Harmon asked Trevor during a follow-up interview. "She volunteered there," Trevor confirmed. "In the gift shop, I think, but that was years before she died." Archives from the hospital confirmed that Ruth and Anna had overlapped for approximately 3 months in early 1992. What connection they might have had remained unclear. Ruth had died of natural causes in her sleep just 2 weeks after Anna's disappearance. Marion Collins found herself unwittingly entangled in a decades-old mystery. Why her? Why now? She had no connection to Ruth Dawson or Anna Fletcher. She had moved to Oak Ridge only 8 years ago from Pittsburgh. Or so she thought. While reviewing Marion's background, Detective Harmon discovered something she herself had forgotten. As a child, Marion had spent one summer in Oak Ridge with her aunt while her parents worked through a temporary separation. That summer was 1992, the same summer Anna Fletcher vanished. I was only 9, Marion protested when Harmon shared this discovery. I barely remember that summer at all. But someone remembered her, someone who believed she had seen something or knew something about what had happened to Anna Fletcher 33 years ago. The case remains active but unresolved. Marion Collins still lives in her house in Oak Ridge, though she seldom uses her bedroom closet anymore. She keeps her clothes in a wardrobe she purchased shortly after the incident. Detective Harmon checks in regularly, looking for connections between a 9-year-old girl's summer, a missing hospital employee, and an elderly volunteer who took her secrets to the grave. The wooden box and photograph remain in evidence storage. The blood on Marion's bathroom mirror and floor has never been matched to any individual in any database. And somewhere, perhaps, Anna Fletcher's remains lie undiscovered, her story untold except for cryptic messages and haunting clues delivered decades later to a woman who cleans her bathroom every Sunday, ensuring there is never a spot out of place, except for those that weren't there yesterday. Crime 5, he showed up at the cafe claiming they dated. He knew her dog's name, her favorite book, the scar on her back, but she had never seen him before. When she reported him, the officer said something chilling. "This is the 3rd time you filed this report." Jessica Thorne had lived in Greenville for most of her 32 years, a small town nestled between rolling hills and dense forests in western Pennsylvania. It was the kind of place where people recognized each other at the grocery store, and neighbors still brought casseroles when someone moved in. Jessica worked as a librarian at the local public library, a job she had held since graduating college. Her colleagues described her as reliable, organized, and private, not unfriendly, but selective about who she let into her inner circle. Her routine rarely varied. Monday through Friday, she would arrive at the library by 8:30, carefully hanging her coat in the staff room and making a cup of Earl Grey tea before starting her day. Lunch was always packed from home, eaten at her desk while she caught up on reading. Evenings were spent in her small bungalow on Maple Street with her border collie, Cooper, who she had rescued 3 years earlier. Weekends might include a hike in the nearby state park or coffee with her small group of friends at Daybreak Cafe, the cozy establishment on Main Street where locals gathered to exchange small-town gossip. Jessica's life was predictable, orderly, and exactly how she liked it. That was before March 17, 2023, when the man with the familiar eyes walked into Daybreak Cafe. It was a Friday afternoon, unseasonably cold for mid-March. Jessica sat in her usual corner booth, thumbing through her worn copy of The Secret History by Donna Tartt while waiting for her friend Melanie. The bell above the door jingled as customers came and went. She paid little attention until she felt someone standing beside her table. "Jessica, I thought that was you." She looked up to see a man in his mid-30s with dark hair and a neatly trimmed beard. His voice carried a hint of somewhere else not quite local. Nothing about him seemed familiar. "I'm sorry, do I know you?" Jessica asked politely, marking her page with a finger. The man's expression faltered slightly. "Very funny, Jess. It's Daniel Mercer." Jessica felt the first chill of unease. No one called her Jess, and she certainly didn't know any Daniel Mercer. "I think you have me confused with someone else," she said, her voice steady despite the growing discomfort. The man Daniel slid into the seat across from her uninvited. "Come on, we dated for almost 8 months last year. Is this because of how things ended? I thought we were past that." Jessica closed her book completely now. "Sir, I've never met you before. Please leave my table." Daniel's face changed then, not angry but deeply concerned. "Jess, this isn't funny. We met right here at this cafe. You were reading that same book. You told me about the scar on your lower back from when you fell out of a tree house when you were 9. Cooper growled at me the first time I came to your house. You even showed me your grandmother's emerald ring that you keep in that little wooden box on your dresser." The details were too specific, too accurate. Jessica felt her breath catch. The tree house fall, the ring. These weren't things a stranger could know. "How do you know these things?" she whispered. Daniel leaned forward, genuine confusion creasing his forehead. "Because you told me. Because we spent nearly every weekend together last summer. Because I know you, Jessica." Their conversation was interrupted by Melanie's arrival. Daniel excused himself after scribbling his phone number on a napkin, giving Jessica one last wounded look before walking away. "Who was that?" Melanie asked, sliding into the booth. "Nobody," Jessica said quickly. "Just someone who thought I was someone else." But later that evening, alone with Cooper at her side, Jessica pulled out her journals and photographs, searching for any trace of this man who claimed to know her so intimately. There was nothing, no mention of a Daniel, no photos, no text messages on her phone. Yet how did he know about her grandmother's ring, the wooden box, details she rarely shared with anyone? 2 days later, Jessica finally went to the Greenville Police Department. Officer Ben Harmon, who had been a year ahead of her in high school, took her statement with increasing concern. "This man knows details about my life that he shouldn't," Jessica explained, her hands wrapped tightly around a styrofoam cup of station coffee. "Personal things, it's like he's been watching me." Officer Harmon typed notes into his computer, then paused, glancing at his screen with a frown. "Jessica, according to our records, this is the 3rd time you've filed this report." The cup slipped from her fingers, spilling coffee across the desk. "What? No, that's not possible. I've never reported this before." Harmon turned his monitor so she could see it. There it was 2 previous reports, dated February 3 and February 27, describing a man named Daniel Mercer who claimed to have dated her. Both reports were signed with her signature. "I didn't file these," Jessica whispered, but even as she said it, she recognized her handwriting on the forms. The investigation that followed revealed disturbing inconsistencies. Security footage from the library showed Jessica having animated conversations with an unseen person during her lunch breaks. Her coworker, Marion, gently asked why she had stopped having lunch with that nice man who used to visit her. Cooper, who typically barked at strangers, wagged his tail enthusiastically when Daniel's name was mentioned. Most concerning were the gaps in Jessica's memory. Dr. Alina Wright, the neurologist who examined her, found no signs of tumor or stroke, though she recommended further testing. Memory is complex, Dr. Wright explained. Sometimes the mind can compartmentalize traumatic experiences. But I don't feel traumatized, Jessica insisted. I feel erased. As weeks passed, more evidence of Daniel emerged in Jessica's life. A jacket in her closet that wasn't her style, a second toothbrush in her bathroom drawer, a book of poetry with an inscription, "To Jess, who understands the spaces between words. Love, Daniel." When Detective Marcus Reed took over the case in April, he approached it from a different angle. Instead of focusing on Jessica's memory, he began investigating Daniel Mercer. "If this man exists, he'll leave traces," Detective Reed assured her. What he uncovered only deepened the mystery. Daniel Mercer had indeed moved to Greenville the previous spring. He had rented an apartment on Elm Street, just 3 blocks from Jessica's home. He worked remotely as a software developer. Several townspeople remembered seeing Jessica and Daniel together at the farmer's market, at the summer festival, walking Cooper in the park. But there were inconsistencies. Daniel's landlord described him as keeping to himself. No one had been inside his apartment. His rental agreement listed a previous address in Seattle that turned out to be a vacant lot. His employment couldn't be verified. In late April, Jessica received a package. Inside was a photo album filled with pictures of her and Daniel at a lake she recognized in her backyard at Daybreak Cafe. In every image, Jessica was smiling, clearly comfortable in his presence, but she had no memory of any of these moments. Jessica brought the album to Detective Reed, who examined the photographs carefully. "These look authentic," he said finally, "but in the digital age, that doesn't mean much." Then came the recordings, voice messages on a phone Jessica didn't recognize, but that was found in her own desk drawer. Her voice, intimate and affectionate, talking to Daniel about their day, making plans for the weekend, mentioning inside jokes. "That's my voice," Jessica admitted, tears streaming down her face, "but I don't remember any of this." By May, the case had attracted attention beyond Greenville. A neuropsychiatrist from Pittsburgh suggested the possibility of dissociative amnesia. A true crime blogger proposed a complex stalking scenario involving deep fake technology. Some in town whispered about Jessica's mental health, about attention-seeking behavior. Jessica began to doubt herself. Had she forgotten an entire relationship? Was there something wrong with her mind, or was something more sinister at play? The truth began to emerge on May 23rd, when Detective Reed received a call from authorities in Ashford, Connecticut. A woman named Rachel Palmer had reported an eerily similar experience. A man named David Monroe, who claimed they had a relationship she couldn't remember, who knew intimate details of her life, who had somehow inserted himself into her community's memories. And there was another case in Bennington, Vermont, and one in Lakeside, New York. As investigators connected these cases, a pattern emerged. Each town was small, somewhat isolated. Each woman was in her early 30s, lived alone, worked in a position with access to community information. Each had a predictable routine, limited close relationships, and a private nature. And each woman had approximately 2 weeks before the reunion with the man they supposedly dated, been approached by a market research company conducting a detailed lifestyle survey. When agents searched Daniel Mercer's apartment on June 2nd, they found it nearly empty. No personal touches, minimal furniture, but hidden beneath a loose floorboard was a laptop containing files on Jessica, Rachel, and 6 other women. Detailed notes on their habits, preferences, personal histories, scripts for conversations, digitally altered photographs. Daniel Mercer, if that was even his name, had disappeared. Jessica sat in Detective Reed's office as he explained what they believed had happened. The market research survey, the sophisticated social engineering, the careful construction of a fictional relationship, inserted piece by piece into the community's consciousness through manipulated digital records, strategic conversations, and carefully placed physical evidence. But why, Jessica asked, why go to all that trouble just to make me think I knew him? Detective Reed hesitated. We believe this may be an elaborate form of psychological experimentation, testing how far reality can be manipulated, how malleable human memory really is. The case remains active. Daniel Mercer has not been found, though investigators have linked him to similar incidents in 3 other states. Jessica has relocated to a larger city, changed her name, adopted more varied routines. Sometimes when she can't sleep, she still wonders about those photographs. Her smile looked so genuine, her body language so comfortable with this stranger. Sometimes she questions whether the investigators got it right, whether there might be another explanation for the memories she's missing and the memories he seemed to have. Whether somewhere in her mind, in a place she can't access, she still knows him. And sometimes, in that space between wakefulness and sleep, Jessica wonders how many of her remaining memories truly belong to her, and how many might have been placed there by someone else. Crime 6, Fayette County, Pennsylvania, had always been a place of quiet histories. Its rolling hills and small communities existed in a gentle rhythm that rarely caught national attention. The Haverston residence on Elmwood Drive was no exception, a 3-story Victorian home built in 1892, its weathered blue paint and wraparound porch blending into the neighborhood like any other historical landmark. Martin Crew, a 47-year-old contractor from nearby Uniontown, had renovated dozens of these aging properties throughout his career. When Elaine Michaels purchased the Haverston home in February 2023, she hired Martin's company to modernize the interior while preserving its historical character. The home had been unoccupied for nearly 8 years after the passing of its previous owner, Eleanor Haverston, whose family had owned the property for generations. The house had good bones, Martin would later tell detectives. Needed updating, but nothing unusual, just another old house with outdated wiring and plumbing. 3 weeks into the renovation, on March 15th, Martin's team began work on the 3rd floor. The blueprints showed 5 bedrooms, but the layout they encountered contained only 4. The northeast corner of the house, where the 5th bedroom should have been, appeared to be part of an unusually large linen closet. An assistant noticed that the dimensions didn't match what should have been there. "Something's off with these measurements," said Tyler Weston, the 29-year-old assistant who first identified the discrepancy. "There's about 100 square feet unaccounted for." That afternoon, Martin instructed 2 workers to remove a section of drywall in the closet where the mismeasurement occurred. Behind it, they discovered an older wall with faded floral wallpaper, and in that wall was a doorway sealed shut with dozens of nails driven through the frame from both sides. The nails appeared to be hand-forged, consistent with those used in the late 19th century, but some were clearly more modern, suggesting the door had been sealed on multiple occasions over decades. "It was the nails that bothered me most," Martin would later say. "Why nail a door from both sides? How would that even be possible unless someone was inside when the second set was driven in?" The workers carefully removed the door to reveal a small bedroom, approximately 10 by 10 feet. Dust lay thick across every surface, undisturbed for what appeared to be many years. The room contained a simple twin bed with a metal frame, a small wooden desk with a chair, and a chest of drawers. The walls bore faded blue wallpaper with a pattern of small sailboats, but what immediately caught everyone's attention were the marks on the walls. Long, jagged scratches covered large portions of the wallpaper, concentrated around the doorframe and windows. Some appeared to have been made by fingernails, others by some kind of implement. The scratches formed no pattern or words, just chaotic, desperate marks. One of the workers, Lisa Giannopoulos, was the first to notice something else unusual. The window was painted shut, she observed, but from the inside. When homeowner Elaine Michaels arrived at the property later that afternoon, she was visibly shaken by the discovery. "I knew these old houses had their quirks, but nothing like this," she told Martin. She gave permission to document everything before disturbing the scene further. The local police department was called but classified the discovery as unusual but not criminal. There was no immediate evidence of a crime having been committed, just an oddly concealed room in a very old house. They suggested documenting everything but didn't open an investigation. That evening, Martin returned alone to photograph the room thoroughly. While examining the desk, he found a journal wedged in the back of the bottom drawer. The leather-bound book contained approximately 200 pages, most filled with the same sentence written over and over in increasingly erratic handwriting. He never left. The journal bore no name, no dates. The first few pages contained normal entries describing mundane daily activities, apparently written by a young man. References to mother and father suggested he was their son. The writer described being ill with something that caused fever and confusion. Then the entries changed, becoming the single repeated sentence. The final page, however, was different. Written in steady, controlled handwriting, unlike the frantic scrawls preceding it, was a simple instruction: check under the mattress. Martin lifted the thin mattress from the metal bed frame. Taped to the underside was a sealed envelope, yellowed with age. Inside was a black and white photograph of a family, a stern-looking man, a woman with a tight smile, and two boys who appeared to be teenagers, perhaps 15 and 17. On the back, written in faded ink, Haverston Family, 1923. Below this was a newspaper clipping dated October 12, 1923. The headline read, "Local Youth Succumbs to Influenza." The brief article reported that Thomas Haverston, 15, had died after a 3-week battle with influenza complicated by pneumonia. The family requested privacy during their time of mourning. Martin called Elaine immediately, who in turn contacted the County Historical Society. What they discovered in the following days pieced together a troubling narrative. County death records confirmed Thomas Haverston's death in October 1923. However, school attendance records showed his older brother, James Haverston, stopped attending school that same month, despite being enrolled for the fall term. More significantly, there was no further record of James Haverston anywhere in county documents after October 1923. No death certificate, no marriage license, no property records, as if he had simply ceased to exist. Detective Sarah Langley, who eventually took interest in the case despite its age, developed a theory that would haunt everyone involved. Based on the evidence, we believe James Haverston may have been experiencing symptoms similar to his brother's illness. The family, having just lost one son, took extreme measures to prevent what they feared was a highly contagious disease from spreading. The theory suggested that the parents may have quarantined James in the sealed room, perhaps initially with good intentions. But something went terribly wrong. The scratches on the walls tell us someone was desperate to get out, Detective Langley noted. The journal suggests the occupant experienced confusion and possibly hallucinations consistent with high fever. At some point, it appears the door was nailed shut from both sides, possibly the exterior first, then someone inside securing it further, perhaps in delirium or fear. The most disturbing possibility remained unspoken but understood. Had the Haverston parents sealed their surviving son in the room, either believing he was already dead or fearing his illness too dangerous to risk exposure? Elaine Michaels ultimately made the difficult decision to continue with the renovation. The room was photographed extensively, samples of the wallpaper preserved, and the journal donated to the County Historical Society. The space was incorporated back into the home as originally planned. The mattress and bed frame were removed for further examination. Beneath where the bed had stood for a century, someone had scratched 5 words into the wooden floorboards: "James is still in this room." No human remains were ever found in the walls or floor of the sealed bedroom. No further evidence emerged to conclusively explain what happened to James Haverston in the fall of 1923. County records show his parents, William and Margaret Haverston, continued to live in the house until their deaths in 1948 and 1951, respectively. The home passed to distant relatives as they had no surviving children. Some nights, Elaine reports hearing scratching sounds from the 3rd floor. Probably just the settling of an old home, she tells herself, though she rarely ventures upstairs after dark. The journal now sits in the archives of the Fayette County Historical Society. Occasionally, researchers request to see it, struck by the increasingly desperate repetition: "He never left, he never left, he never left." Perhaps he didn't. Crime 7, the map showed 10 plots, but when she walked through the cemetery, she counted 11 stones. The last one was blank, no name, no date. A bouquet of fresh lilies sat at its base. Next to it, a note with her address. Emily Winters had always found comfort in routines. Each morning she would wake at precisely 6:15, brew a cup of Earl Grey tea, and spend 30 minutes reading before driving to her job at the Oak Ridge County Library. Her colleagues described her as methodical, reliable, perhaps a bit too predictable. At 42, Emily had settled into the rhythm of small-town life in Pine Haven, Massachusetts, a community where most residents recognized each other by name. She had moved there 7 years ago after her divorce from Robert. The separation had been amicable enough, but Emily craved the anonymity that came with relocation. In Pine Haven, she cultivated a new identity, the quiet librarian who kept to herself but always had a kind word for those who visited her desk. Few knew of her past life in Boston, and that's exactly how Emily preferred it. What people did notice about Emily was her weekly ritual. Every Sunday afternoon, weather permitting, she would visit the old Whispering Pines Cemetery on the outskirts of town. The locals found it peculiar. Emily had no family buried there, but she explained that she found the stillness therapeutic. The truth was more complicated. Emily had suffered a miscarriage in her final year with Robert, and though there was no grave for her unborn child, the cemetery provided a space for her private grief. October in Pine Haven brought crisp air and early sunsets. The cemetery, bordered by ancient oak trees now draped in amber and crimson, looked particularly beautiful this time of year. Emily had been coming here long enough to know every headstone, every family plot. The oldest graves dated back to the 1850s, with the most recent addition being old Mrs. Henderson, who had passed 3 years prior. It was Detective Marcus Lawson who first noted the significance of Emily's familiarity with the cemetery. "And you're absolutely certain there were only 10 plots in the northwest corner?" he asked, his pen hovering above his notepad. They sat across from each other at the Pinehaven police station, a converted Victorian house that still maintained much of its original character. Emily nodded, her hands wrapped around a paper cup of cooling coffee. "I've been visiting that cemetery for 7 years, Detective. The Marston family plot has 10 graves. I've counted them dozens of times." Lawson's eyes, tired but alert, studied Emily's face. At 53, he had served the Pinehaven community for over 2 decades, handling mostly minor infractions, the occasional drunk driver, teenage vandalism, domestic disputes. This case was different. This felt personal. "Tell me again about finding the 11th headstone," he said. Emily closed her eyes, summoning the memory of 3 days prior. It was around 4 in the afternoon. The sun was starting to set. I followed my usual path through the cemetery, and when I reached the Marston plot, something felt off. She opened her eyes, meeting Lawson's gaze. I counted the stones twice. There were 11 instead of 10. And the new one had no inscription. Just blank granite, polished, new-looking, and those flowers, white lilies. They were fresh, probably placed there that morning. Detective Lawson shifted in his seat, and the note. Emily's voice became softer. A small white card, like the kind that comes with flower deliveries. It just had my home address written in blue ink. No signature, no message. What Emily didn't mention was how her blood had seemed to freeze in her veins when she saw those familiar numbers and street name, or how she had looked around frantically, suddenly feeling watched from between the ancient trees, how she had run to her car, dropping her keys twice before managing to unlock the door with trembling hands. In the days that followed, Detective Lawson launched a quiet investigation. The cemetery's caretaker, Harold Jenkins, swore no new grave had been installed. There was no record of a burial permit being issued, no excavation equipment reported in the area. The plot maps clearly showed 10 Marston graves, not 11. Yet the stone remained solid and undeniable. Forensics found no fingerprints on the smooth granite surface or on the note card. The florist who had sold the lilies described the buyer as average, medium height, baseball cap, paid in cash. No security cameras had captured the transaction. Emily began staying with her friend Diane after the discovery, too unnerved to remain alone in her small cottage on Maple Street. She took a leave of absence from the library, citing personal reasons. The few who knew about her situation advised her to leave town temporarily, but Emily refused. "I won't be driven away," she told Detective Lawson during their 3rd meeting. "This person, whoever they are, wants me frightened. I won't give them that satisfaction." Lawson admired her resolve, but worried about her safety. "We still don't know what this means, Emily. It could be a threat, or it could be some elaborate prank." What they both knew but left unspoken was that small towns like Pinehaven rarely saw elaborate pranks. The blank headstone felt like a countdown, a promise of something yet to come. The investigation took an unexpected turn when Diane called the police station late one evening. Emily had received a package, a small box wrapped in brown paper, no return address. Inside lay a tarnished silver pocket watch. The face was cracked, the hands frozen at 3:27. "It belonged to my grandfather," Emily whispered when Lawson arrived to examine the item. "He died when I was a teenager. We buried him with this watch." Lawson's expression darkened. "You're certain it's the same one?" Emily pointed to the initials engraved on the back, TJW Thomas James Winters. This is his watch, but his grave is in Boston, hundreds of miles from here. The implications were disturbing. Someone had either exhumed her grandfather's grave, or perhaps more troublingly, had been watching Emily long before she moved to Pinehaven, long enough to know about a personal item buried with her grandfather nearly 25 years ago. The investigation expanded. Records showed no reported disturbance at Thomas Winter's gravesite in Boston. Emily provided Detective Lawson with a list of everyone from her past who might hold a grudge: ex-boyfriends, former colleagues, neighbors from her Boston days. Each was investigated and cleared. As days turned into weeks, the blank headstone remained in place. Town officials wanted to remove it, citing the lack of proper burial permits, but Detective Lawson insisted it stay untouched. It was evidence in an ongoing investigation. Emily began to notice other disturbances. Her mail would arrive opened and then carefully resealed. Objects in her home appeared in slightly different positions than where she had left them. Once, returning from grocery shopping, she found her front door unlocked, though she distinctly remembered securing it before leaving. "Someone's playing mind games," Lawson told her during one of their now frequent conversations. "They want you paranoid, waiting for something worse." Emily's sleep became fragmented, her appetite diminished. The few times she ventured into town, she felt eyes on her back, though when she turned, there was never anyone watching. 6 weeks after discovering the headstone, Emily received another package. This one contained a single photograph, Emily herself, asleep in her bed, taken through her bedroom window. On the back, written in the same blue ink, "Soon." That night, against Lawson's advice, Emily returned to the cemetery alone. The moon cast long shadows between the headstones as she made her way to the Marston plot. The blank headstone gleamed faintly in the moonlight. Fresh lilies rested at its base. She stood before it, a curious calm washing over her. "What do you want?" she whispered to the empty air. "To finish what we started," came a voice from behind her. Emily turned slowly, recognition dawning before she could make out the figure's face in the darkness. Detective Lawson arrived at the cemetery 40 minutes later, responding to an anonymous call. He found Emily seated on the ground, her back against the blank headstone, remarkably composed for someone who had just confronted her stalker. "It was Robert," she said simply as Lawson approached. "My ex-husband." Robert Williams sat in the back of a patrol car, handcuffed and silent. The search of his vehicle revealed surveillance equipment, more photographs of Emily, and detailed notes tracking her movements over the past 7 years. "He blamed me for the miscarriage," Emily explained as paramedics checked her for injuries. "He became obsessed with the idea that I had somehow caused it deliberately. When I left him, moved here, he followed, watched me, planned this elaborate scenario with the headstone." "The grave was meant for you," Lawson concluded quietly. Emily nodded, her expression distant. "He said he's been digging it for years. Not just the physical hole in the ground that he prepared somewhere in these woods, but the psychological grave. Isolating me, making me paranoid, making me feel like I was already half buried." In the days that followed, psychiatric evaluation revealed the extent of Robert's delusions. He had created an elaborate mythology around Emily and their unborn child, convinced that she needed to be reunited with the baby through death. The blank headstone was to be filled with her name once his plan was complete. The 11th stone was eventually removed from the cemetery, but its absence left a different kind of mark on Pinehaven. Residents now looked at Emily differently, with sympathy, curiosity, or unease. The quiet librarian had become the center of the town's most disturbing story in decades. Emily returned to work at the library after 3 months. She moved to a new house on the other side of town. She adopted a dog, a large, gentle retriever mix that slept at the foot of her bed each night. Gradually, she established new routines. But she never visited the cemetery again. Detective Lawson would sometimes see her at the local coffee shop, her face thinner but her eyes clearer than during the investigation. They rarely spoke of what happened, though once, as winter melted into spring, she stopped by his table. "I've been wondering," she said, setting down her cup. "Do you think he would have gone through with it, or was the psychological torture the real goal all along?" Lawson considered the question carefully. Some people need to see their stories reach a conclusion. Others prefer the story to never end. I think Robert fell into the second category. The anticipation, the fear he caused, that was his real purpose. Emily nodded thoughtfully. The blank stone was more terrifying than one with my name already carved on it. Precisely. As she walked away, Lawson reflected on the peculiar nature of obsession, how it could transform love into something unrecognizable, how it could distort reality until fantasy became more compelling than truth. Robert Williams would likely spend the rest of his life in psychiatric care, still convinced of his own twisted narrative. What troubled Lawson most, what he never shared with Emily, was what they had found buried beneath the blank headstone when they finally removed it. A small box containing an infant's hospital bracelet, never used, with the surname Williams and a date that matched Emily's miscarriage 7 years earlier. Some graves, Lawson knew, were never meant to be discovered. Some secrets should remain buried, especially in quiet towns like Pine Haven, where the past has a way of emerging when least expected, like an 11th stone in a plot meant for 10. Crime 8, she bought it at an estate auction. Ornate, heavy, bound in thick, rusted chains, Curiosity 1, she cut them off. As she cleaned the glass, a handprint appeared from the inside, smearing downward. Behind her, no one moved. The morning Rebecca Thorne found the mirror at the Hartwick estate auction, September rain pattered against the farmhouse windows. The local realtor had advertised the event as clearing out the remnants of the old Hartwick place, but Rebecca, an antique dealer from Millfield, Massachusetts, recognized it as what it really was, dismantling what remained of a family's history after tragedy. The Hartwick farmhouse had stood empty for 3 years. The youngest son, Daniel Hartwick, had been the last to live there, alone after his parents passed. His disappearance in November 2021 remained unexplained, his truck found abandoned at Millfield Lake, his wallet and keys still inside, no body ever recovered. Rebecca noticed the mirror in the basement, propped against a wall behind stacks of old National Geographic magazines. 6 feet tall, with an ornate bronze frame featuring intertwined ivy leaves and faded cherubs, it seemed strangely at odds with the otherwise practical farmhouse furnishings. Most peculiar were the heavy, rusted chains wrapped around it in a crisscross pattern, secured with an antique padlock. "What's the story with this one?" she asked the auctioneer. The man shrugged. "Found it like that. Old man Hartwick was superstitious. Maybe he thought it was bad luck." Rebecca paid $175 for the mirror. As she loaded it into her van, she noticed handwritten text etched into the back of the frame. 1894, do not remove chains. That evening in the workshop behind her store, Rebecca examined her purchase more carefully. The chains appeared to have been in place for decades. Curiosity overcame caution, and she used bolt cutters to snip through the links. They fell away with a heavy clatter that echoed through the quiet workshop. The mirror's glass was cloudy with age and grime. As Rebecca wiped it with a soft cloth and cleaning solution, she noticed something unusual, a handprint appearing from the inside of the glass, as if someone were pressing against it from within, fingers smearing downward. She spun around, heart racing, but she was alone in the workshop. When she turned back, the handprint was gone. That night, Rebecca dreamed of reflections that moved independently of their owners. Detective Leanne Mercer had been with the Millfield Police Department for 17 years. The Daniel Hartwick case had been her obsession for the past 3. Every few months, she would revisit the files, re-interview witnesses, walk the shore of Millfield Lake where his truck had been found. When Rebecca Thorne called the station on October 12, 2024, reporting strange occurrences in her antique shop, Leanne almost dismissed it as Halloween season nerves. But something in the woman's voice, a controlled fear, a reluctance to sound irrational, caught her attention. The mirror belonged to the Hartwicks, Rebecca explained when Leanne arrived at the shop. Since I brought it here, things have been moving. At night, I hear footsteps upstairs when no one's there, and customers keep asking about the man who works here, a tall man with a beard who stands in the corner. I work alone, detective. Leanne examined the mirror. Its craftsmanship was remarkable, but nothing seemed unusual about it. You said you found writing on the back. Rebecca turned the heavy frame to reveal the warning about the chains. Below it, barely visible, was another inscription, J.H. 1967, sealed after third death. J.H. would be James Hartwick, Daniel's grandfather, Leanne noted. What made you cut the chains? Rebecca's face flushed. Professional curiosity. I wanted to restore it properly. That evening, Leanne visited the County Historical Society. The archivist, Eleanor Wells, a woman in her 70s who had cataloged Millfield's history for decades, remembered the Hartwicks well. James Hartwick was odd, Eleanor said, pulling out a folder of newspaper clippings. After his twin brother Joseph died in 1967, he became obsessed with mirrors, claimed Joseph was trying to communicate through them. She handed Leanne a yellowed newspaper article dated April 3, 1967. Local man found dead in home, mirror shattered. The article described how Joseph Hartwick was found dead in his bedroom, surrounded by broken mirror shards, with cuts on his hands and face that appeared self-inflicted. The family had a history of mental illness, Eleanor added quietly. Joseph was the third Hartwick to die violently near mirrors. James wrapped chains around every mirror in the farmhouse after that. Rebecca couldn't sleep. Since cutting the chains, she'd experienced increasingly disturbing phenomena. She would glimpse movement in the mirror from the corner of her eye. Sometimes, walking past it, she would see her reflection delayed by half a second, as if catching up to her. Most unsettling were the whispers she heard at night, a man's voice, too faint to make out the words, seemingly emanating from the workshop where the mirror stood. On October 15th, she called Leanne again. I found something, she said, her voice trembling. I was cleaning the frame more thoroughly and discovered a hidden compartment in the base. When Leanne arrived, Rebecca showed her a small leather journal she had extracted from the mirror's frame. The brittle pages contained entries dating from 1894 to 1967, written by different hands, all Hartwicks. The earliest entry from Elijah Hartwick described purchasing the mirror in Boston from a European immigrant who warned him it was a door that should remain closed. Subsequent entries documented strange occurrences, reflections that moved independently, voices heard near the mirror, and family members who became obsessed with staring into it for hours. The final entry from James Hartwick was the most disturbing. Joseph is gone. He said the people in the mirror were calling him. I found him trying to climb through it somehow, cutting himself on the glass. The mirror must be sealed. They want to come through. They have taken 3 Hartwicks now. I will chain it so no one else can release them. Leanne looked up from the journal. This is difficult to believe. Rebecca nodded. I know how it sounds, but something is happening here. Last night I saw a man's face in the mirror, not my reflection. He looked like the photos I've seen of Daniel Hartwick. That night Leanne couldn't shake the uneasiness that had settled over her. Against her better judgment, she returned to Rebecca's shop after hours. The antique dealer had given her a key, saying she was staying with a friend, too frightened to remain in the building. The workshop was dark and silent. Leanne turned on her flashlight and approached the mirror, which Rebecca had covered with a sheet. Slowly, she pulled the covering away. In the beam of her flashlight, the mirror's surface seemed to ripple slightly, like water disturbed by a gentle breeze. Leanne moved closer, studying her reflection. For a moment, everything appeared normal. Then her reflected self smiled, while Leanne's actual face remained frozen in concentration. Her heart pounding, she stepped back. The reflection stepped forward. Behind her reflection, another face appeared, a bearded man whose eyes held profound sadness. Daniel Hartwick, she realized, exactly as he appeared in the missing person photos. The glass surface began to undulate, bulging outward as if something were pressing against it from the other side. A hand emerged, not from Leanne, but from the man behind her reflection, fingers stretching toward the real world. Leanne stumbled backward, knocking over a nearby chair. The sound seemed to break whatever force was at work. The mirror's surface solidified again, though Daniel's face remained visible, his eyes pleading. With shaking hands, Leanne retrieved the fallen chains from where Rebecca had left them. Working quickly, she wrapped them around the mirror, securing them with a padlock she had brought from the evidence room, the same one found in Daniel's truck. As the lock clicked shut, she heard a long, mournful sigh. Daniel's face faded from view. 3 days later, divers recovered Daniel Hartwick's remains from Millfield Lake in an area that had been searched multiple times before. The coroner determined he had drowned, though no explanation could be given for why the body had not been found during previous searches. The mirror, chains restored, was locked in the evidence room at the Millfield Police Department. Leanne filed a report documenting the recovery of Daniel's body, but omitted any mention of the mirror's strange properties or her experience in the workshop. Rebecca Thorne sold her shop and moved to Arizona, telling friends she needed a change of scenery. She refused to discuss the mirror with anyone. Occasionally late at night when the station is quiet, the officer on duty will report hearing strange sounds from the evidence room, like fingers tapping on glass seeking attention. But no one investigates, and if sometimes when passing the chain mirror they glimpse faces that shouldn't be there, reflections of people who are not present in the room, they say nothing. Some doors once opened can never truly be closed again. Some chains are meant to remain unbroken, and some reflections reveal truths we are not meant to see. In Millfield, they no longer hold estate auctions for the properties of those who disappear. Some histories are better left undisturbed, buried under dust and silence, forgotten by all except those who carry their weight in dreams that feel like memories of things that never happened. Or perhaps things that haven't happened yet. Crime 9, she was leaving the grocery store when a man touched her shoulder and said, "They told me you were dead." He looked shaken, said her name, called her by a childhood nickname she hadn't heard in decades. He pointed to a scar on her wrist. "You got that saving me." Meredith Porter stood frozen in the Safeway parking lot, plastic bags hanging from her fingers, eyes locked on the stranger before her. The evening air in Cedar Falls, Idaho had turned crisp with autumn's approach, but it wasn't the cold that made her shiver. The man, tall, with tired eyes and salt and pepper stubble, studied her face with an unsettling intensity. "I'm sorry," Meredith managed. "I think you've confused me with someone else." The stranger's face fell. "You're not Lizzie Porter from Lakeside. You have the scar, the one from the lake when we were kids." Meredith's fingers instinctively touched the thin white line across her right wrist. A childhood accident, her parents had always told her. She'd fallen on broken glass at 7 years old. "My name is Meredith Porter," she said quietly. "I've never been called Lizzie, and I don't know you." The man stepped back, confusion etched across his features. "I'm sorry, you look exactly like, but that's impossible. Elizabeth Porter died 28 years ago. You could be her twin." Meredith watched him walk away, her heart hammering in her chest. The grocery bags suddenly felt impossibly heavy. As she loaded them into her car, a disquieting thought settled over her. She had no siblings, no twin. She was an only child, that's what her parents had always said. At home, in the quiet kitchen of her modest bungalow, Meredith poured herself a glass of wine and tried to dismiss the encounter. But as she prepared dinner, her mind kept returning to the stranger's words, the scar on her wrist, the nickname she'd never heard, the certainty in his eyes. After dinner, she found herself pulling out the old photo albums her mother had given her before moving to Arizona 5 years earlier. Most of the pictures were familiar, family vacations, school events, holiday gatherings, but something felt different tonight as she turned the pages. Had there always been these strange gaps in the chronology, pages that seemed to have been removed, and why were there so few photos from before she was 8? Meredith called her mother that evening. Catherine Porter answered on the third ring, her voice warm but slightly guarded when Meredith mentioned the strange encounter. "Oh, honey, you know how people are. Mistaken identities happen all the time." "But Mom, he knew about my scar, and he called me Lizzie." A pause too long. What was this man's name? "I didn't ask," Meredith admitted, "but he said he knew Elizabeth Porter from Lakeside. He said she died 28 years ago." Another silence, heavier this time. "Meredith, I think you should let this go. Some confused man mistook you for someone else, that's all." But the tremor in her mother's voice told a different story. Sleep eluded Meredith that night. At 3 a.m, she opened her laptop and typed Elizabeth Porter drowning Lakeside into the search bar. Nothing relevant appeared. She tried various combinations: Porter family Lakeside, child drowning Lakeside 1996, Elizabeth Porter death. Finally, a hit, a digitized newspaper article from the Lakeside Chronicle, dated July 18, 1996. Local child presumed drowned after boating accident. The article was brief. 8-year-old Elizabeth Porter had been on a family boating trip when she reportedly fell overboard. Despite extensive search efforts, her body was never recovered. The article mentioned that Elizabeth's 5-year-old brother had nearly drowned trying to save her but was pulled from the water by their father. Meredith's hands trembled as she read. The date, July 1996, was just months before her family had moved to Cedar Falls. She had always believed they'd moved for her father's job. She'd always believed she was born in Cedar Falls. The following morning, Meredith called in sick to the elementary school where she taught 3rd grade. Instead, she drove to the county record's office. The clerk was helpful but confused by Meredith's request. "You want to see your own birth certificate?" 3 hours later, Meredith sat in her car, staring at the document in her hands. Meredith Ann Porter, born September 12, 1988, in Rochester, New York, not Idaho as she'd always believed. Parents, Catherine and James Porter. But something else caught her eye, a small notation in the corner, indicating the certificate had been issued as a replacement in October 1996. That evening, Meredith drove to the only person in town who might remember her family's arrival, Mrs. Winters, her elderly former neighbor who had lived in the same house for 40 years. The old woman welcomed her with tea and cookies, delighted by the unexpected visit. "Mrs. Winters, do you remember when my family moved here, to Cedar Falls?" The older woman's forehead wrinkled in thought. "Oh my, that was so long ago. You were such a quiet little thing when you arrived. Your parents were very protective." "Was I sick when we moved here?" Mrs. Winters looked uncomfortable for a moment. "Well, dear, your mother mentioned you'd had some kind of accident. You were recovering. That's why you started school a bit late that year." "An accident," Meredith's mouth went dry. "Something about a fall, I believe. You had nightmares for months. I could hear you sometimes screaming across the yard." On the drive home, Meredith's phone rang, her mother's number. "Sweetheart," Catherine's voice sounded strained. "I've been thinking about what you said yesterday, about that man. I need you to drop this for your own good." "Mom, I went to the records office. My birth certificate was reissued in 1996, and I found an article about Elizabeth Porter drowning in Lakeside." The silence that followed was deafening. "Mom, we were trying to protect you," Catherine whispered finally. "The trauma was too much. The doctors said it would be better this way." "What are you talking about? Better what way?" "You were there when it happened, Meredith. On the boat, you saw everything. You tried to save him. That's how you got the scar on your wrist, grabbing at a broken piece of the railing. After the accident, you wouldn't speak, wouldn't respond to your name. The psychiatrist suggested a fresh start." "Him," the article said Elizabeth was the one who drowned. Another pause. "No, honey, you are Elizabeth. It was your little brother Michael who drowned that day." The world seemed to tilt beneath Meredith. "That's not possible," the article clearly said. "Your father paid to have that story changed. He knew the editor. We needed people to think Elizabeth Porter was gone, so you could become Meredith, so you could forget." 2 days later, Meredith sat in a coffee shop in Lakeside, a town 3 hours from Cedar Falls. Across from her was the stranger from the grocery store, Daniel Halston, her childhood neighbor and Michael's best friend. His father had pulled 5-year-old Michael from the lake that day, but it had been too late. "You were never the same after," Daniel explained gently. "You blamed yourself even though you were just a child. You stopped talking, stopped responding. Your parents were desperate." "So they created a new person," Meredith whispered. "They erased Elizabeth Porter and invented Meredith. They thought they were doing the right thing. The doctors said the trauma might be too much for you to process at that age. Meredith stared into her coffee cup. I've had dreams my whole life of water, of reaching for someone's hand and missing. I've always been afraid of lakes. I never understood why. Daniel nodded solemnly. Memory is strange that way. Sometimes the mind protects itself by forgetting, but the body remembers. All these years, Meredith's voice trailed off. I've been living someone else's life. No, Daniel said firmly. You've been living your life just with pieces missing. As autumn deepened in Lakeside, Meredith Porter, once Elizabeth, visited the shore of the lake where her brother had died. She laid flowers at the water's edge and watched the gentle lapping of waves against the rocks. Somewhere in the depths of her mind, fragments of memory stirred, a child's laughter, a small hand in hers, a moment of terror as that hand slipped away. The truth hadn't brought Michael back, it hadn't even fully restored Elizabeth. But as she stood by the lake that had claimed so much, Meredith finally understood the weight she'd carried all these years, a grief she hadn't been allowed to feel, for a brother she hadn't been allowed to remember. Sometimes the deepest mysteries aren't about finding what was lost, but discovering what was hidden within ourselves all along. For Meredith Porter, the search for truth had only just begun. Meanwhile, in a quiet corner of the lakeside cemetery, a small headstone bearing the name Elizabeth Ann Porter stood among the others, a grave with no body, marking the death of a girl who never actually died. And beside it, a well-tended stone for Michael James Porter, aged 5 years, whose body had washed ashore 3 days after the accident that changed everything. 2 graves, one empty, one life fractured and reassembled, and the slow, painful process of becoming whole again. Story 10, beneath the surface of her new home, a hidden world waited to be discovered. As Sarah Coleman's foot nudged a loose plank, a subtle shift in the floor caught her attention. Intrigued, she knelt down, tracing her fingers along the edges, sensing the concealed space below. With gentle precision, she lifted the boards, unveiling a dark, narrow chamber. At first, only dust and cobwebs greeted her gaze. But as her eyes adjusted to the dimness, shapes emerged from the shadows: a mattress, a chair, and in the corner, a weathered notebook filled with repetitions of her own name. Detective Morgan Reed stood silently behind Sarah, observing the unfolding mystery with a mix of concern and intrigue. Beyond the mere discovery of a hidden room, there lingered an unsettling aura of violation and malevolence that permeated the air. "Do not disturb anything further," Detective Reed's voice cut through the stillness, authoritative yet soothing. With a click, her flashlight pierced the darkness, revealing walls adorned with surveillance photographs capturing Sarah's every move: walking, talking, living. A shrine of obsession meticulously crafted beneath her very feet. Sarah had acquired the quaint cottage from the estate of a reclusive man named Walter Green, an enigmatic figure who had passed away, leaving no trace of kin. The property, dormant for months, exuded an air of serenity on the surface. Yet the hidden chamber told a different story, one of clandestine observation and eerie fixation. "I never crossed paths with him," Sarah murmured, her voice barely a whisper. "The previous owner." The neighbors' tales painted Walter as a recluse, and the inspection reports had suggested the basement access had long been sealed. The sudden revelation shattered these assumptions, plunging Sarah into a realm of dread and uncertainty. As crime scene investigators descended upon the scene, their presence marked by the echoing thud of equipment against the wooden floors, the hidden room yielded its secrets to their meticulous scrutiny. Evidence was documented, the mattress, chair, and notebook extracted for further analysis. Forensic experts unraveled a web of fingerprints belonging solely to Walter Green, scattered throughout the concealed chamber. What unnerved the investigators most was the timeline. They reconstructed a timeline of Walter's silent vigil over Sarah, spanning several years prior to his demise. A shadowy figure watching, waiting, unseen and unknown. This fixation, it evolves, the department psychologist interjected during a briefing, his words laced with gravitas. From fantasy to reality, from admiration to obsession, the hidden room suggests a sinister progression. Detective Reed's inquiry took a chilling turn as she delved into Walter's past, unearthing a connection that shed light on his dark intentions. A former coworker, fidgety and anxious, divulged fragments of conversations with Walter, hinting at a disturbing fixation on Sarah. Whispers of possession, of a belief that she belonged to him alone. Armed with a warrant, Reed unlocked a long-forgotten locker at Walter's workplace, unearthing a key that led them to a storage unit shrouded in mystery. The metallic door groaned open, revealing a meticulous replica of Sarah's former life, a haunting mirror image of her belongings arranged with eerie precision. A mannequin, its features mirroring Sarah's own, sat poised at a familiar desk. But the most chilling detail was a calendar marking a fateful day, a day that never came to pass, a day of togetherness. Walter's haunting legacy traced back to his turbulent youth, marked by an infatuation that spiraled into delusion and confinement. Released into the world, he lived in obscurity until Sarah's presence reignited his dormant obsession. At the precinct, Reed laid out the evidence, a mosaic of Walter's distorted reality. In his mind, they shared a bond destined for eternity, she recounted, her voice tinged with sorrow. A connection forged in his solitude, an illusion of love unreturned. Could there have been an encounter, a spark that ignited this fixation? A fellow detective pondered. Reed shook her head, the weight of the truth heavy upon her. Sometimes these obsessions need no catalyst, a fleeting glance, a passing smile enough to fuel a fire that consumes the mind. Unable to shake the specter of Walter's looming presence, Sarah made the decision to part ways with the house, seeking solace in a new beginning far from the shadows of the past. During a final walkthrough with her real estate agent, she stood amidst the echoes of a life interrupted, haunted by the question of what might have been. The chapter closed on Walter's dark legacy, labeled as stalking with sinister intent, a plan never fulfilled but forever etched in fear. Sarah vanished into anonymity, a ghost escaping her captor's grasp, while Detective Reed silently watched over her, a guardian against the unseen threats that lingered in the night. The cottage passed into new hands, ignorant of its hidden secrets, its dark chamber sealed and forgotten. Life flowed on, but for those privy to the tale of the hidden room, it stood as a chilling reminder of the shadows that lurk beneath the surface, of the monsters that slumber unseen, and the victims who narrowly evade their grasp. Story 11, in the quiet stillness of an abandoned Victorian, a sense of mystery lingered like a whisper in the shadows. The dust danced in the air, swirling in a timeless dance as she crossed the threshold, stepping into a world forgotten by time. The walls, peeling with age, bore witness to the stories that once filled its rooms. Furniture draped in sheets stood frozen in time, waiting for life to return. Each door she opened led her back to the parlor, a room that seemed to hold the key to the house's secrets. No matter which handle she turned, no matter how far she wandered, she found herself back in the same place, trapped in a loop of time and space. The house held her captive, its corridors a maze of confusion and mystery. The discovery of Morgan Pierce's body only deepened the enigma that shrouded the Victorian mansion. Detective Sarah Lind stood at the threshold, her gaze sweeping over the dim interior where forensic technicians moved like phantoms in the night. The house, once a mere curiosity, now held darker truths waiting to be unraveled. Morgan, found seated in an antique chair in the parlor, seemed at peace, as if waiting for some unknown visitor. The absence of struggle or signs of violence cast a haunting stillness over the scene, sending shivers down the spines of even the most seasoned investigators. As the investigation delved deeper, secrets began to unfurl like tendrils of ivy creeping along the walls. Morgan, a student of architectural anomalies, had been drawn to the house by its reputation for confounding visitors. Her research led her to uncover strange phenomena, acoustic distortions, chilling cold spots, and doors that defied logic. Her journal hinted at a connection to someone who shared her fascination, someone who spoke of the house as if it held a consciousness of its own. Messages deleted from her phone revealed a cryptic exchange, hinting at a deeper understanding of the house's mysteries. The truth began to surface with the revelation of a rare alkaloid in Morgan's system, hinting at a connection to shamanic rituals and altered states of perception. But as her boyfriend insisted, Morgan was no reckless thrill seeker. She was a meticulous researcher dedicated to unraveling the truth. The investigation took a twisted turn with the involvement of Adam Reeves, an architectural historian whose expertise in spatial anomalies had drawn Morgan's attention. Their bond hinted at a shared perception of the house as something more than mere bricks and mortar, a living entity with secrets waiting to be unveiled. But as alibis were confirmed and timelines scrutinized, the mystery deepened with the revelation of a family secret long buried in the shadows of the Victorian mansion. The Blackwood family, plagued by a series of deaths in the parlor, spoke of a sinister force they called the Claiming, a malevolent influence that drew souls into its grasp. A hidden compartment behind the parlor fireplace revealed artifacts from ancient cultures, arranged in a pattern that spoke of rituals long forgotten. At its center, a carved figurine symbolizing a deity of liminal spaces, where boundaries blurred and realities intertwined. The house held its secrets close, revealing only fragments of a truth too vast to comprehend. The investigation took a tragic turn with the death of Adam Reeves, mirroring Morgan's fate in a macabre twist of fate. Clutched in his hand, a key unlocked the final chamber of the house, a place where perceptions shifted and reality bent to the will of unseen forces. In his final words, Reeves spoke of a truth that transcended the physical, a truth that bound them to the house, not by chains of steel but by threads of perception. The house, a living entity with a mind of its own, drew in those who dared to understand its secrets, weaving them into its tapestry of mystery and intrigue. The case remained open, a specter haunting the minds of those who dared to tread near the condemned Victorian mansion. Lights flickered in the darkness, whispers echoed in the night, as rumors swirled of souls lost to the house's insatiable hunger for understanding. For those who believed, the house held the key to a realm beyond reality, a realm where the boundaries of perception blurred and the veil between worlds grew thin. And as the shadows lengthened and the night grew deep, the house stood silent, a sentinel guarding its secrets with a vigilance as ancient as time itself. Story 12. The aged envelope lay in the detective's hands, its corners tinged with yellow, yet the stamp was a recent addition, just sent days before. With cautious precision, Detective Sarah Morgan unfolded the envelope, revealing a solitary sheet of paper. The message, hastily typed in an erratic font, read, "I am sorry for what I did." A subtle dampness clung to the paper, carrying a faint scent of iron. It wasn't until then that the reddish streak along the bottom became apparent. Not ink, but blood. Gingerly, Detective Morgan secured the letter in an evidence bag, her gloved hands moving with practiced expertise. The forensics team's findings confirmed her suspicions the crimson stain was human blood, matching the DNA from an unsolved homicide case that had plagued the department for years. The victim, a young journalist named Rebecca Warren, had been discovered in her apartment with multiple stab wounds, her laptop missing, and notes strewn across the floor, hinting at a connection to her investigative work. Despite exhaustive efforts, the case had grown cold until this cryptic letter arrived at the police station, addressed simply to the Homicide Division. The paper and envelope yielded scant fingerprints, only faint smudges suggesting the sender had worn gloves. The postmark, however, provided a vital light after months of stagnation. Detective Morgan gathered her team in the briefing room, the walls adorned with images of crime scenes, timelines, and suspect profiles that had led nowhere. Placing the letter at the heart of their investigation board, she declared, "This changes everything. Our perpetrator shows remorse." Detective James Chen, Morgan's longtime partner on the case, scrutinized the letter. "Or perhaps they wish us to believe so," he countered. "The blood could be a theatrical ploy, a means of taunting us." Tracing the typewriter's unique imprints to a model long out of production, the forensics team embarked on a hunt, reaching out to antique shops and collectors across the region. Meanwhile, they delved deeper into Rebecca's life, learning of her fearless dedication to uncovering corruption. Her latest probe had delved into a wealthy family entangled in local politics, rife with intrigue following the patriarch's recent passing and the ensuing disputes over inheritance. Interviews with Rebecca's boyfriend, Michael Barnes, revealed subtle shifts in his demeanor upon the discovery of the letter. Rebecca spoke of someone tailing her, he confessed. "I dismissed it as paranoia due to her investigation. I should have paid heed." As the detectives pursued this lead, a second letter surfaced, bearing the same typewritten message, accompanied by another trace of blood. This time the chilling words detailed, "She possessed too much knowledge about the family, about the estate, about the patriarch's demise. I never intended for it to escalate that far." The trail led to the mansion of the deceased patriarch, where they interviewed the eldest son, Richard. Among his antique collection were several vintage typewriters. His explanation regarding them seemed rehearsed, unnaturally polished. A breakthrough came when microscopic fibers on the envelopes were traced back to custom stationery belonging to the family's youngest daughter, Elena. Under scrutiny, Elena disclosed Richard's request to borrow her stationery a month prior. A search of Richard's residence unearthed a concealed chamber containing incriminating evidence, newspaper clippings, surveillance materials, and a vintage typewriter akin to the one used for the letters. Blood analysis linked the samples to Rebecca. Shockingly, financial records revealed sizable payments from Richard to Michael preceding Rebecca's murder. Confronted, Michael broke down, confessing. She uncovered proof that Richard had poisoned his father to expedite his inheritance. "I informed Richard of her discoveries, hoping to deter her. I never fathomed he would resort to murder." Elena provided a pivotal piece, a clandestine recording capturing Richard and Michael plotting against Rebecca. Richard's damning words, "She must be silenced forever," sealed his fate. Attempting to flee, Richard was apprehended, while Michael cooperated, striking a plea deal. Throughout the trial, Richard maintained his innocence, deflecting blame onto Michael. However, the weight of evidence was insurmountable. Swiftly, the jury delivered a guilty verdict. As Richard was led away, Detective Morgan approached Rebecca's grieving parents, offering a semblance of closure. The blood-stained letters lingered in evidence, a stark reminder that even the most meticulous crimes leave traces. True remorse, whether genuine or feigned, can unravel the facade of those who believe they've executed the perfect crime. Rebecca Warren's case endured as a lesson for aspiring detectives, underscoring that breakthroughs often arise from the simplest of sources, a weathered typewriter, and the burden of guilt weighing upon a killer's soul. Story 13. The aged apartment held its secrets, whispering pipes, creaking floorboards, but the new tenant sensed a difference in the air. The footsteps she heard were too purposeful, too precise. They echoed from above, slow and steady, yet she resided on the highest floor. One night, gathering her courage, she tapped the ceiling with a broomstick. The sound ceased. Silence enveloped the space. Then a solitary knock reverberated from within the ceiling. Sarah Coleman chose to keep the knocking incident to herself. She convinced her mind it was merely the building settling, or perhaps a small creature exploring the attic. Despite the nightly footsteps continuing, she adapted, raising the volume of her television, wearing headphones to bed, anything to drown out the rhythmic footfalls tracing paths across her ceiling in the darkness. Detective Morris learned of the apartment through a maintenance worker who stumbled upon a hidden crawl space during routine repairs. While fixing a water leak outside Sarah's unit, the worker uncovered an unexpected passage hidden behind a section of drywall that defied the building's plans. A narrow corridor emerged, illuminated by a flashlight to reveal a makeshift living area, discarded wrappers, scattered bottles, a soiled blanket, and a small journal. The building superintendent contacted the authorities immediately. Detective Morris, accompanied by Detective Rivera, arrived to find the maintenance worker visibly shaken. "Someone's been dwelling in the walls," he repeated anxiously. "Someone's been watching." The journal contained detailed notes on Sarah Coleman, her daily routine, her visitors, her meals, her entertainment choices, her bathing times, her sleep patterns. The writing started orderly but evolved into chaos towards the end, with strange symbols creeping into the margins. The final entry read, "The subject no longer responds to my signals. She has chosen to ignore me. No one ignores me." Forensic teams scoured the crawl space, uncovering fingerprints unmatched in any database. They unveiled a complex network of passages woven into the building's walls and ceilings, some dating back decades according to structural analysis. The passages linked to 5 different apartments, yet only terminated in observation points, tiny holes camouflaged as fixtures or minor damages within Sarah Coleman's unit. Residents were interviewed, with current tenants reporting no abnormalities beyond typical apartment noises. Former inhabitants, however, shared unsettling experiences. 3 past tenants of Sarah's apartment recounted feeling watched or hearing unexplained movements. One had departed after a mere 2 weeks. None had spoken up, fearing ridicule for their paranoia. The breakthrough emerged when forensics detected minuscule blood particles in one of the crawl spaces. DNA testing traced it to Martin Weaver, a former resident who had vanished without a trace 4 years prior. His disappearance had stumped investigators, despite his family filing a missing persons report. Martin had resided directly beneath Sarah's apartment. Detective Morris revisited Martin's case, discovering that he had complained about noises from the apartment above. He had confronted Edward, the quiet occupant residing above him at the time. Shortly after, Martin vanished. Edward vacated the premises the following month, leaving no forwarding details. Investigations into Edward's history revealed a pattern. He had moved between 6 apartment buildings over 2 decades, consistently selecting top-floor units, forming few social ties, and departing abruptly. A neighbor from his 3rd residence described him as intense, recalling his frequent pleas for silence. Property records disclosed that Edward owned isolated rural land. Upon reaching the location, investigators encountered a cabin adorned with photos and notes. images of residents from various buildings, Martin Weaver and Sarah Coleman among them, maps of ventilation systems and building vulnerabilities, detailed journals chronicling specimen observations and habitat maintenance. At the cabin center stood a corkboard displaying newspaper clippings, missing persons reports numbering 6. All were former residents of buildings Edward had inhabited. Deep gouges marred the floor beneath the board, suggesting something heavy had been dragged repeatedly. Beyond the cabin, cadaver dogs led authorities to disturbed earth. Exhumation unearthed human remains, and another burial, and another. As forensic anthropologists embarked on the somber task of identifying the victims, Detective Morris revisited Sarah's building. Though the crawl spaces had been sealed, residents sporadically reported peculiar noises. During security system installations, maintenance workers uncovered a notebook tucked into a corner where the ceiling met the wall, a newer journal compared to the first discovery. The initial page bore a solitary line. "They found my old nest, but not my new one." The handwriting mirrored the previous journal. The final page exhibited a crude sketch of Sarah's apartment layout with a new passage marked in red and a date for that night. Officers hurried to evacuate Sarah, only to find her residence deserted. Her phone rested on the kitchen counter. Her television played silently. Her shower ran. In the bathroom, a message materialized on the fogged mirror, etched by a finger, "Look up." The ceiling panel above the shower had been removed. The manhunt for Edward, now identified as Edward Mercer, a former construction worker skilled in renovations, persists. His knowledge of structures allowed him to construct hidden passages for surveillance. Thermal scans of Sarah's building revealed no current occupancy within the walls. Sarah Coleman remains missing, her case linked to vanishing acts across multiple states. Detective Morris's mind lingers on the image not of the graves or journals, but of the unsuspecting residents in photos. He ponders Sarah, enduring those footsteps in an apartment void of an upper neighbor, the footsteps that ceased when she responded, and then echoed back. Sometimes in the solitude of his home, Detective Morris gazes upwards, listening, waiting, and pondering who else might be listening too. Story 14, The Realtor's Secret. The mention of a basement was conspicuously absent from the realtor's listing. The blueprints, meticulously examined, revealed no trace of it. Yet beneath the old carpet in the living room of the Mercer family's new suburban home, a hidden door lurked, its heavy handle rusted with age. With combined effort, they pried it open, unleashing a wave of stale air thick with the scent of damp earth. Descending the steps into the darkness below, they braced themselves for storage space, but found something far more unsettling. A solitary chair occupied the center of the small basement room, illuminated by a swaying light bulb. Behind it hung a row of photographs, familiar faces, frozen in moments captured from inside their own home. The Mercers, newcomers to the neighborhood, had been drawn to the character and history of the two-story house with its faded siding and creaking floors. Little did they anticipate the dark history ingrained within its walls, ready to intersect violently with their present. Detective Sarah Connors arrived at the scene with her partner, the crime scene unit already at work securing the area with fluttering yellow tape. Mrs. Mercer's distressed call had described the shocking discovery beneath their home, prompting Connors to meticulously document every detail before allowing anyone else to descend into the hidden depths. The basement, no larger than a standard bedroom, featured concrete walls painted a drab gray, with the enigmatic chair bolted to the floor beneath the stark light. Yet it was the wall of photographs, arranged in precise chronological order, that held the key to the mystery. Each image, meticulously dated, chronicled the lives of the Mercer family within their supposedly private sanctuary. The absence of forced entry or stolen items only added to the chilling nature of the intrusion. Forensic analysis uncovered a multitude of fingerprints, many belonging to previous owners of the property, hinting at a dark legacy hidden within the house's foundations. As the investigation progressed, uncovering altered blueprints, withdrawn permits, and redacted reports, a pattern emerged, one of secrecy and surveillance shrouding the property's history. Interviewing the contractor who had renovated the house years earlier provided a breakthrough. His denial of the existence of the basement room, coupled with his shaken demeanor, fueled suspicions of a sinister force at play. Digital evidence extracted from a hidden memory card unveiled a trove of additional images, capturing not just the Mercers, but a lineage of families who had unknowingly shared their home with an unseen observer. The discovery of audio recordings strategically placed throughout the house further deepened the mystery, pointing to a level of surveillance far beyond what the initial search had revealed. Connors, her urgency palpable, ordered a thorough search of every nook and cranny, unearthing a hidden monitoring station behind the wall of photographs. A journal bearing the name Edward Kelvin detailed intimate observations of each family that had resided in the house, culminating in a chilling revelation: the impending arrival of the next unsuspecting residents. Fingerprint matches confirmed the unthinkable. Edward Kelvin, the house's elusive architect, had never truly departed, but had instead retreated into its hidden recesses, a silent watcher of those who dwelled within. The subsequent manhunt, culminating in Kelvin's discovery within the labyrinth of crawl spaces he had constructed, exposed a mind consumed by delusions of ownership and guardianship over the property's inhabitants. Despite his detached demeanor and rationalizations, the families who had fallen under his voyeuristic gaze chose to abandon the house, leaving behind a legacy of fear and violation. The trial, unveiling the intricate network of surveillance woven into the very structure of the house, sealed Kelvin's fate. As the property was razed to the ground, its remnants buried, the families haunted by the specter of their unseen observer struggled to shake the feeling of perpetual scrutiny. In quiet moments, they found themselves casting wary glances at air vents, light fixtures, and shadowy corners, questioning the true nature of their solitude and the boundaries of their perceived privacy. Story 15, the apartment had sat vacant for months, its silence thick like a heavy fog. When the new tenants crossed the threshold, they carried with them low expectations, a layer of dust, perhaps some forsaken furniture left behind. But there was one door that stood stubbornly closed, refusing to yield to their gentle nudges. It was a closet, its secrets locked away from prying eyes. The landlord, with a nervous twitch in his eye, finally summoned the strength to force the door open. Anticipation hung in the air, thick and heavy. The tenants braced themselves for the mundane sight of old coats or discarded junk. But what greeted them was a scene that sent shivers down their spines. The walls of the closet bore deep, uneven scratches, etched into the wood with a desperation that spoke volumes. In the corner, like a specter from the past, lay an old flip phone, its screen still softly glowing with an unread message. Detective Morgan Shaw, a seasoned investigator with a keen eye for detail, felt a chill creep up her spine at the sight. It wasn't the blood or violence that unsettled her, but the silent screams of those scratch marks, a haunting echo of someone trapped, fighting against the darkness. "We need forensics here immediately," she instructed her partner, Officer Reed, whose camera clicked away, capturing the haunting evidence before them. "And bring me the records of the previous tenants." The message on the phone was stark in its simplicity. "I know what you did. The landlord, his palms damp with sweat, revealed that the previous tenant had left abruptly, abandoning their rent. A young woman, he said, quiet and unassuming, who had vanished without a trace 6 months prior. His eyes darted nervously, avoiding the closet as if it held the key to a mystery he wished to leave buried. Forensics painted a grim picture, blood samples embedded in the scratches on the walls, most belonging to a single person. Emma Caldwell, a 28-year-old woman, reported missing after she stopped showing up for work. But there were 2 other DNA samples, one unidentified in the system, and the other belonging to a man who had supposedly perished in a car crash 2 years earlier. Shaw's brow furrowed in deep concentration as she pored over the perplexing evidence. Derek Mercer, a man long declared dead, now seemed to leave his mark in the shadows of Emma's apartment. The pieces of the puzzle began to shift and rearrange, revealing a tapestry of deception and darkness. Emma's life, frozen in time within the walls of her apartment, whispered of interrupted routines and unanswered phone calls. A pattern emerged: an unknown caller, a whispered mention of a mysterious boyfriend. The pieces of the puzzle were slowly falling into place, leading Shaw down a twisted path of secrets and lies. Surveillance footage captured a shadowy figure entering the building behind Emma, a man in a baseball cap, his identity carefully shielded from prying eyes. The revelation of partial fingerprints belonging to Derek Mercer on the closet's doorknob sent a shiver down Shaw's spine. "He faked his death," she murmured, her voice a solemn whisper in the midst of the gathering storm. "But for what purpose, and what ties him to Emma's fate?" As the investigation deepened, a connection emerged: a missing woman, Lynette Porter, whose disappearance mirrored Emma's own vanishing act. Shaw's mind raced, connecting the dots that led to a remote property shrouded in shadows and secrets. Behind heavy basement doors, a grim discovery awaited them: Lynette, alive but broken, a prisoner of Mercer's twisted desires. Her words, a soft echo in the darkness, spoke of horrors endured in silence, of a man who reveled in the agony of others. The evidence mounted, painting a portrait of a man consumed by his need for control and domination. Journals filled with madness, photographs capturing the essence of his victims, and chilling video recordings of Emma's final moments all pointed to a darkness that Shaw could scarcely comprehend. The manhunt for Derek Mercer spanned jurisdictions, a shadow slipping through the cracks of the world. But as the net closed around him, a chilling truth emerged: a man driven not by mere violence, but by a hunger for suffering, for the slow unraveling of hope in confined spaces. When they finally caught him, Mercer bore the mask of a man untouched by guilt or remorse. His words, like shards of ice, cut through the silence. She sent that message to herself, he claimed, his eyes devoid of humanity. She sought her own demise, a fate she richly deserved. The trial laid bare the elaborate web of deceit Mercer had spun, a tapestry of lies woven with the threads of unsuspecting lives. Emma's body was never recovered, lost to the darkness that had claimed her. The jury's verdict came swiftly, a condemnation that echoed through the courtroom like a final reckoning. As Mercer faced the cold reality of a life sentence, a faint smile played upon his lips, a silent acknowledgement of a game well played. But it was Lynette Porter's voice, a beacon of resilience in the darkness, that rang out in defiance. "He trapped us in his world of shadows," she declared, her eyes ablaze with a newfound strength. "But I choose the light, the warmth of a new dawn." And so, as the chapter closed on Mercer's twisted saga, Detective Shaw kept a memento, a piece of the closet door that bore witness to Emma's silent struggle. It served as a reminder that sometimes the most harrowing tales are not written in blood, but in the echoes of those who fought to break free from the darkness. Story 16. The old house had sat silent for years, untouched by life after the young woman's disappearance. Whispers from the neighbors spoke of her vanishing, leaving behind a void that lingered in the air. Yet, as new tenants crossed the threshold, they encountered a peculiar sight, the bedroom door sealed shut, a mystery waiting to be unraveled. With a gentle push, the door creaked open, revealing a room frozen in time. The air within was thick with neglect, dust dancing in the faintest light that filtered through the curtains. Everything appeared undisturbed, the bed neatly made, the mirror gleaming, a solitary candle extinguished, its wax frozen in time like tears of forgotten sorrow. And there upon the desk lay a notebook, its pages whispering secrets of the past. Detective Morgan delved into its contents, each stroke of ink unraveling the tale of Elise Winters, a young soul lost to the shadows. Her words danced across the pages, each letter a testament to her fear and determination. "I know he's watching me tonight," her final entry echoed through the room. The detective's brow furrowed as he absorbed the weight of her words, the truth she sought to reveal before vanishing into the night. The room held its breath as forensic technicians combed through the remnants of the past, seeking answers in the silence that enveloped the space. The landlord lingered in the doorway, a ghost of worry etched upon his face, haunted by the mysteries that lay within those four walls. Elise's life, once meticulously crafted in the halls of a prestigious law firm, now painted a picture of intrigue and deception. Her pursuit of truth had led her down a path fraught with danger, her discoveries hidden in the shadows of corporate greed. As the investigation unfolded, secrets long buried began to surface. Hidden compartments revealed damning evidence of corruption, of lives sacrificed at the altar of profit and power. Elise's voice echoed through the recordings, a beacon of light in a sea of darkness. The truth, once obscured, now shone brightly in the dimly lit room, illuminating the path to justice. The pieces of the puzzle fell into place, connecting Elise's fate to those who sought to silence her. Vincent Harriman, a man of power and influence, stood at the center of the storm, his faudeck crumbling in the face of overwhelming evidence. The hidden passage, a gateway to the truth, bore witness to his sins, sealing his fate in the eyes of the law. The courtroom held its breath as the verdict was delivered, the weight of Elise's legacy casting a shadow over Harriman's final moments of freedom. The truth, a silent witness in the room she never truly left, stood as a testament to her courage and resilience. The house, a relic of the past, stood as a monument to justice served, its walls whispering tales of a young woman's fight for truth. The light that flickered in the upstairs window held a promise that no secret remains hidden forever, that justice will always find a way to prevail. And as the night settled over the empty house, a sense of peace descended, a quiet acknowledgement of the battles fought and won within its walls. The legacy of Elise Winters lived on, a beacon of hope in a world shrouded in darkness, her story etched into the very fabric of the house that stood as her silent witness. Story 17. It appeared in the post, cloaked in a simple envelope with no sender's details. A solitary brass key, weathered by time. The homeowner couldn't place it, yet there was a whisper of recognition in its presence. Testing it in every lock she owned yielded no results. It didn't belong to her. But when she placed it on the coffee table, the ancient grandfather clock in the hallway emitted a solitary, eerie chime despite its long silence. Sarah Miller informed the authorities after stumbling upon the enigmatic key. What began as a curious mishap soon unfurled into one of the most unsettling criminal investigations the tranquil suburban enclave had ever encountered. The initial responder, an officer, brushed off her worries. A key in the mail, likely a mix-up, he suggested, but Sarah couldn't shake the feeling of unease. Reluctantly, the officer took the key as evidence, mostly to placate her, sealing it in a small evidence bag that would later take center stage in an extensive inquiry. Detective Robert Harmon was handed the case file during the morning briefing. A seasoned investigator with the Special Victims Unit, he possessed a sixth sense for cases destined to evolve beyond their benign beginnings. The brass key sat on his desk, unassuming yet disquieting. Background checks unveiled Sarah's clean record. A retired high school English teacher, widowed, with adult children residing across the nation. Nothing amiss in her financial accounts, phone records, or online presence. She seemed exactly as she professed, an unsuspecting recipient of something peculiar. Forensic analysis revealed only Sarah's prints on the key. The envelope divulged nothing but a standard postmark from the local distribution center. No DNA, no trace evidence. The key itself, a run-of-the-mill Schlage, showed signs of wear, at least a few years old. A breakthrough arrived unexpectedly when Detective Harmon decided to input the key's unique bidding pattern into the department database. A cold case from 7 years prior had documented an identical key pattern linked to a storage unit where blood-stained carpet, tools for cutting, and photos of unidentified women were found. The original investigation had hit a dead end due to insufficient evidence to pinpoint a suspect. Harmon delved into the dusty case files. The retired detective who had led the case had long left the force. The storage unit had been rented under a false name, paid in cash. Surveillance footage had been overwritten. The evidence collected had produced partial DNA samples with no matches in any criminal database. The photos retrieved from the unit depicted 5 women, all unconscious. Only 3 had been identified during the initial probe, all reported missing but never located. Their cases remained open, labeled as suspected homicides with no bodies found. Sarah Miller couldn't recognize any of the women in the pictures. As the investigation progressed, she grew increasingly uneasy, fortifying her home with new locks and a security system. The looming question remained, why had someone sent her this key? Harmon ordered a fresh analysis of the original evidence using modern techniques. The partial DNA sample was expanded and cross-referenced with genealogical databases. This led to a distant familial match, a second cousin twice removed from the suspect. Tracing back through family trees, investigators honed in on Harold Jenkins, who had lived 2 streets away from Sarah until relocating about 6 years ago. His current whereabouts were a mystery. Further research unveiled Jenkins as a substitute teacher at the school where Sarah taught, though their documented interactions were minimal. His work history showed irregularities, unexplained gaps, and frequent moves. A search of his former residence turned up nothing suspicious. Neighbors described him as unassuming, someone who kept to himself, a common description that often follows revelations about predators blending in with society. The burning question lingered, why send the key to Sarah now? Harmon theorized it might be a trophy, a warning, or perhaps a sinister invitation. The hunt for Jenkins intensified. His driver's license had expired. No activity on credit cards, no tax filings. The digital trail typically left by individuals was conspicuously absent, hinting at a deliberate effort to stay off the grid. The true horror of the case came to light when authorities inspected a small cabin registered under Jenkins' late mother's name. Beneath the aged wooden floorboards, investigators stumbled upon a hidden chamber accessible only through a trapdoor. Inside, meticulously arranged shelves held dozens of identical brass keys, each tagged with a name and date. 5 keys corresponded to the women in the photos. The remaining keys, 27 in total, hinted at additional victims previously unknown to law enforcement. Behind the cabin, forensic teams unearthed human remains. The excavation spanned weeks, revealing multiple bodies in various stages of decay. Sarah was placed under constant protection as the nationwide manhunt for Jenkins gained momentum. Behavioral profilers suggested the key symbolized a twisted offering, Jenkins singling out Sarah to admire his art. The media christened him the Keymaster, a moniker that spread like wildfire in national news. Fear gripped the community as residents questioned how such terror had lurked among them undetected. Tracking dogs followed a scent from the cabin into the dense wilderness. Search parties scoured rugged forested areas. Thermal drones surveyed impassable terrain too hazardous for ground teams. The manhunt evolved into one of the region's largest. In a stroke of luck, a wildlife photographer exploring remote woods captured an image resembling Jenkins. The grainy picture depicted a bearded man with vacant eyes carrying a backpack, venturing deeper into the wilderness. Authorities zeroed in on the area, establishing a perimeter. Tactical units navigated challenging terrain while psychological profilers anticipated Jenkins wouldn't surrender easily. They suspected he had prepared for the scenario with hidden supplies and escape routes. The final showdown unfolded when a patrol officer spotted Jenkins attempting to cross a river. Rather than give himself up, Jenkins retreated to higher ground, barricading himself in a deserted fire observation tower. Negotiators tried to communicate for hours to no avail. When tactical teams breached the tower, they found Jenkins lifeless from a self-inflicted injury. Beside him lay a journal detailing his crimes, along with a brass key identical to the one Sarah had received. Inside a waterproof container, investigators uncovered more evidence, including photos, maps marking burial sites, and personal items taken from victims, a meticulously kept record of atrocities spanning nearly a decade. The final entry in the journal addressed Sarah directly. "You never noticed me, but I noticed everything about you. The key opens nothing because what I wanted to give you cannot be unlocked with metal, only with recognition. Now everyone will remember my name." The subsequent inquiry identified a total of 32 victims. Families who had agonized over missing loved ones finally got closure, albeit with the heavy burden of confirmed tragedy. Unable to reconcile the proximity of horror to her ordinary life, Sarah never returned to her house. The grandfather clock that had chimed mysteriously was scrutinized and found to harbor a discreet wireless transmitter Jenkins had been observing, waiting for the moment she received his gift. The case stands as a chilling example of predatory behavior concealed beneath a facade of normalcy. Psychologists continue to scrutinize Jenkins' writings in hopes of spotting similar offenders before they strike. And somewhere in an evidence vault, a set of brass keys serve as silent witnesses to lives cut short, each key unlocking nothing, yet revealing a harsh truth about the darkness that can lurk behind unassuming masks. Story 18. The hotel stood silent and forgotten, a relic of a bygone era, its walls whispering tales of transient guests who passed through its doors. It was a place of faded grandeur, where shadows lingered in the corners and memories clung to the peeling wallpaper. The receptionist handed her a worn key, his eyes betraying a hidden warning as he uttered in a hushed tone, "Avoid the final door on the left." Intrigue stirred within her as she navigated the dimly lit hallway that night. The air was heavy with a sense of foreboding as she approached the door singled out by the clerk. The metal handle sent a shiver through her hand, and when she pressed her ear against the ancient wood, a soft breath tickled her senses from the other side. Detective Morgan Reed found herself at the scene of a crime, her footsteps muffled by the yellow tape that marked the boundary of tragedy. The room exuded a metallic scent, the tang of blood mingling with the musty air. A young woman lay motionless on the floor, her features frozen in a silent scream, her gaze fixed on unseen horrors above. Reed knelt beside the victim, taking in the details of the macabre tableau before her. The pattern repeated a series of inexplicable deaths in nondescript motels, each victim a puzzle piece in a twisted game. The room bore no signs of struggle, no clues left behind except for the lifeless form at its center. As the investigation unfolded, Reed delved into the lives of the fallen women, seeking connections that eluded logic. The killer's motives remained elusive, a shadowy presence lurking just beyond reach. Each piece of evidence led to more questions, drawing her deeper into a web of deceit and darkness. A breakthrough came in the form of a name, Charles Emerson, a man of influence and secrets. Reed pursued the trail of breadcrumbs left by the victims, uncovering a tale of forbidden desire and deadly consequences. Emerson's facade crumbled under the weight of his sins, revealing a heart as cold and calculating as the blade that had silenced his victims. In the courtroom, justice played out like a grim spectacle, the truth laid bare for all to see. Emerson's mask slipped, revealing the emptiness that lay beneath a void where compassion should have resided. Reed stared into those hollow eyes, knowing that some doors once opened could never be closed again. The world dubbed it the door on the left case, a chilling reminder of the darkness that lurks in the most unexpected places. As Reed walked down hotel corridors, she felt the weight of those lost souls pressing in around her, their stories echoing through the empty rooms. And in the evidence locker, the keys to forgotten doors whispered of secrets best left undisturbed, a haunting reminder that some mysteries are better left unsolved. Story 19. Town kept quiet about the house on the outskirts of the woods. It stood solitary, windows shrouded in darkness, its porch bowing under the weight of time. No one laid claim to it, no one could recall its builder. But when a band of hikers strayed too near, they stumbled upon a peculiar sight, names etched into the wooden walls, carved deep like ominous messages. And at the very bottom, fresh and untouched, was a name unfamiliar to them all, until one of them murmured, voice quivering, "That's mine." The call came in under the veil of night. Dispatch logged it as a routine trespassing issue. The voice at the other end belonged to Mason Wright, the leader of the hikers who had stumbled upon his own name carved into the deserted house. The responding officers anticipated nothing more than juvenile mischief, perhaps a prank among pals. What they encountered, however, defied logic. Detective Sarah Keller arrived as the darkness crept over the forest. Her flashlight sliced through the shadows, revealing the weathered front of the building. The names 27 in total ran vertically along the eastern wall. Some had faded with time, nearly blending into the gray wood. Others remained sharp, as if freshly carved. And at the base, Mason Wright, the incision still redolent of sawdust. "I've never set foot here before," Mason insisted, his breath materializing in the chill air. "I can't fathom how anyone would know my name." The inquiry commenced with background checks on each listed name. The findings sent shivers down the spines of the detective team. Every name belonged to an individual reported missing over the previous 4 decades. Some cases had gone cold, others remained active, but all shared a chilling similarity: the persons had vanished while hiking alone. Forensic analysts meticulously photographed each carving, documenting the differing depths, techniques, and weathering patterns. The oldest name, Rebecca Hansen, aligned with a missing persons case from 37 years prior. The case files recounted a young woman who ventured into those woods and never returned. Search parties recovered naught but a lone hiking boot by a stream. Detective Keller extensively interviewed Mason. His narrative remained unwavering. He had no ties to the area beyond the hiking trip with his 4 college companions. They had selected the trail randomly, guided by an online suggestion. Nothing in his background linked him to any of the other names adorning the wall. The focus of the investigation shifted to Mason's friends. Emily Chen, the group's photographer, provided snapshots taken during their hike. Upon scrutinizing the images, analysts detected something unsettling: a blurred figure lurking in the background of 3 separate photos. The silhouette resembled a tall, slender man, always partially obscured by trees. "We didn't encounter anyone else on the trail," Emily asserted. "We would have remembered." Detective Keller ordered a search of the house's interior. Though the structure appeared forsaken, dust blanketing every surface, furniture in disarray, officers unearthed a disquieting tableau in the basement. Personal effects belonging to the missing hikers were meticulously arranged on wooden shelves: watches, backpacks, cameras, wallets, each tagged with a name corresponding to those on the exterior wall. The evidence technicians methodically cataloged every item. Under ultraviolet light, bloodstains materialized on the concrete floor, years of marks someone had endeavored to erase. Ground-penetrating radar unveiled no bodies buried beneath the house, yet cadaver dogs repeatedly alerted near the rear of the property, where the forest grew densest. As the investigation deepened, Detective Keller noted peculiar conduct from Mason Wright. He began reporting eerie incidents: whispers outside his apartment, footprints in fresh snow leading to his door but not away, figures observing from the street. The department assigned an officer for his protection, but Mason's paranoia mounted. The breakthrough arrived when researchers unearthed land records buried in county archives. The house had been owned by a reclusive hunter named Victor Blackwood. Locals seldom caught sight of him, recounting brief encounters with an unsettlingly tall, emaciated man who shunned discourse. 15 years ago, Blackwood vanished without a trace, his disappearance never probed officially. Detective Keller secured a warrant to delve deeper into the surrounding woods. The search party stumbled upon a network of rudimentary hunting blinds strategically positioned along popular hiking routes. Inside one, they uncovered a journal detailing meticulous observations, accounts of hikers, their paths, gear, and routines. The handwriting mirrored samples from Victor Blackwood's scant existing documents. The journal entries grew increasingly disturbing. Initial pages outlined hunting tactics for animals. Later entries delineated humans as prey, their behaviors, vulnerabilities, and methods for their collection. The closing pages featured detailed narratives of stalking each victim on the wall, along with elaborate depictions of how he singled out his targets. The pursuit for Blackwood mobilized across multiple jurisdictions. Helicopters armed with thermal imaging scoured the forest. Tactical units methodically combed every cavern and ravine, yet the suspect remained elusive. Mason Wright ceased responding to calls. Officers dispatched to his residence found the door unlocked, the rooms deserted. Carved afresh on his bedroom wall was a lone phrase: "The hunter becomes the hunted." The search for Mason continued fruitlessly for weeks. Then, during a secondary sweep of Blackwood's house, forensic technicians unearthed a ghastly find. Concealed behind a false wall in the basement was a small workshop housing woodworking tools, jars of wood preservatives, and a freshly carved piece of wood bearing a new name yet to be affixed to the exterior wall. Detective Keller recognized the name instantly. It belonged to the head forensic technician who had processed the house during the initial inquiry. The technician had called in sick that morning and remained unreachable by phone. Authorities established a continuous surveillance cordon around the house. Camera systems monitored every approach. Motion sensors tracked for intrusions. The trap was set. 3 nights later, sensors signaled an alert. Security footage captured a figure emerging from the forest, impossibly tall and slender, moving with uncanny grace. The figure advanced directly toward the house, seemingly unperturbed by the surveillance. As tactical teams closed in, the cameras momentarily lost connection. Upon restoration, the figure had vanished. The house remains under perpetual surveillance to this day. Mason Wright and the forensic technician were never located. The investigation persists, with fresh resources allocated as similar disappearances surface in other wooded areas. The names on the wall have become legendary among law enforcement. Some officers shun uttering them, others steer clear of the case entirely. And local hikers now circumvent the house, fearful that mentioning it might somehow add their names to that dreadful list, the names unspoken by all. Story 20. In the quiet anticipation of their impending parenthood, she felt the urge to refresh the nursery, to infuse new life into the room where their baby would soon slumber. The walls, once cloaked in a weary shade of blue, held within them a silent narrative of bygone days. As she methodically applied the first strokes of white paint, a subtle transformation began to unfold. The fresh hue unveiled something hidden beneath the surface, a cryptic message, initially faint and indistinct, gradually sharpening into view. "Don't let it hear you." Her heart skipped a beat, a shiver running down her spine. Stepping back to survey her work, she noticed something peculiar: tiny handprints, imprinted in the wet paint, positioned too high for any child to have reached. This peculiar discovery within the confines of the Morgan residence nursery marked the genesis of what would later be dubbed the Whispering House case by investigators. The young couple had acquired the Victorian-style abode at a seemingly unbelievable price, with only passing mention of minor aesthetic flaws by the real estate agent, conveniently omitting any reference to the dwelling's ominous past. Detective Sarah Klein, with a poised demeanor and a notebook clutched in hand, rang the doorbell of the residence. A pregnant woman, clad in paint-splattered overalls, answered the door, weariness etched in the shadows beneath her eyes, betraying her lack of repose. Her hands trembled as she recounted the unsettling discovery of the hidden message and eerie handprints. The woman shared that the previous occupants had vacated abruptly, leaving under the cloak of night with only essential belongings hastily packed into their vehicle. Accompanied by the pregnant homeowner, Detective Klein traversed the aged corridors of the historic abode, the aged floorboards creaking underfoot. Upon reaching the nursery, she scrutinized the partially painted wall, the enigmatic message still visible amidst the abandoned paint cans. Adjacent to the words, 5 diminutive handprints adorned the wall, imprinted at an adult's shoulder height. Back at the precinct, Detective Klein delved into the property records, unearthing a disconcerting pattern of 8 ownership turnovers within 30 years, an unusually high frequency. More disquieting were the records of child welfare reports pertaining to 3 of the households, detailing children's accounts of whispers emanating from the walls and unseen specters observing their slumber. Further investigation led the detective to uncover the property's historical background, tracing its lineage back to Alina Blackwood, a childless widow who had operated an orphanage within its walls during the industrial era. Reports from that era chronicled the mysterious disappearance of 5 children under Alina's care, purportedly runaways according to contemporary authorities. Interviews with former residents unveiled a chilling narrative of unexplained phenomena: rearranged toys, spectral laughter echoing through deserted corridors, and cryptic messages surfacing during nursery repainting. The recurrent message, penned in the same hand across decades, instilled a sense of foreboding, Don't let them find you. Don't make a sound. Don't let it hear you. The investigation took a macabre turn as the detective secured permission from the current homeowners to conduct ground-penetrating radar scans in the basement. Anomalies in the readings indicated 5 distinct shapes beneath the concrete floor, each corresponding to a child's dimensions. Upon breaking through the concrete, a grim revelation awaited the remains of 5 children, arranged in a somber circle, bearing pendants engraved with their names. Luminol sprayed in the nursery unveiled a haunting spectacle, countless handprints adorning the walls, imperceptible to the naked eye, a silent testament to the trapped souls seeking liberation. Eleanor's journals, salvaged from county archives, illuminated her twisted motives, believing in the life force of orphaned children to prolong her existence. With the proper interment of the victims, their fate finally acknowledged, the house fell into an eerie silence, the expectant couple reluctant to set foot within its walls again. Detective Klein documented the case's resolution, capturing the ethereal glow of the handprints and the ominous message beneath the layers of paint. Despite the closure brought by justice, an enigmatic presence lingered within the vacant dwelling, transcending time and tangible confines. The nursery walls, witnesses to unspeakable horrors, were dismantled, yet whispers of unseen children persisted in the debris, deterring even the bravest of workers. The house, condemned and forsaken, became a relic of unresolved mysteries, a testament to the lingering echoes of past transgressions. In a solitary photograph, 5 luminous handprints etched in the obscurity served as a poignant reminder that some imprints, like shadows in the night, endure beyond the reach of mortal hands, forever haunting the realms of the living. Story 21. The quaint costume shop was in its final days, the air heavy with the weight of memories as old inventory found new homes. Among the dusty shelves, a woman's fingers danced lightly until they settled on a mask. Delicate features etched in time, yet there was something unsettlingly lifelike about it. The cashier hesitated, a flicker of unease in his eyes as she placed it on the counter. "That's not ours," he muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. Puzzled, she turned the mask in her hands, searching for a tag that was nowhere to be found. With a nonchalant shrug, she decided to bring it home, unaware of the silent presence that would soon awaken within her world. That night a soft sound stirred her from slumber, a whisper of fabric shifting, a barely audible breath of movement. Her eyes fluttered open to darkness, and there it was, the mask, no longer resting on the dresser where she had left it. Instead, it sat on her nightstand, facing her with an intensity that sent shivers down her spine. This woman, known as Catherine Reed, would become a tragic figure in a tale that defied reason and logic. It was her neighbor who stumbled upon the chilling scene the next morning. The front door stood ajar, allowing the gentle morning light to spill into the otherwise dim home. Intent on returning a borrowed book, the neighbor's footsteps led them to Catherine's bedroom, where a nightmare awaited. She lay motionless on the floor, the mask nowhere to be found, leaving behind only questions and a lingering sense of dread. Detective Morgan arrived, a somber figure amidst the hushed voices and clicking shutters. As forensics meticulously documented the scene, the detective's keen eyes absorbed every detail. A partially open drawer, a lipstick-stained water glass, seemingly mundane objects that held secrets untold. There were no signs of forced entry, no visible wounds on the victim, just a frozen expression of terror etched into Catherine's features, haunting all who gazed upon her lifeless form. The medical examiner's examination revealed a chilling truth. The cause of death remained elusive upon initial inspection. No physical harm, no signs of struggle, just the silent scream of fear captured in her final moments. The detective knelt beside the fallen figure, whispering words that hung heavy in the air. Something scared her to death. Catherine, an art appraiser by trade, had led a quiet life punctuated by her keen eye for authenticity. Colleagues spoke of her talents, her ability to discern truth from deceit with a single glance. Could it be that her gift had unwittingly led her down a path of darkness and despair? A thread of connection emerged from the shadows as security footage from the costume shop revealed a peculiar interaction. The cashier's confusion, the owner's denial, a dance of denial and mystery that hinted at a deeper, more sinister truth lurking beneath the surface. The detective's journey led her to the empty shop, where the owner's nervous demeanor betrayed a tale of woe and forbidden knowledge. The mask, an enigmatic artifact from a clearance sale, held secrets that transcended time and reason. Its origins shrouded in mystery, its purpose veiled behind a facade of innocence. Each victim, each death, woven into a tapestry of horror that spanned decades, defying all attempts at resolution. Forensics uncovered a clue buried within Catherine's grasp, microscopic fibers, a silent witness to her final moments. Human hair intertwined with an organic substance of unknown origin, a macabre signature left behind by a malevolent force that defied comprehension. A retired detective, a keeper of dark truths, shared a revelation that pierced the veil of ignorance. Ancient symbols hidden within the masks, a gateway to a realm of soul transference and unspeakable rituals that whispered of a darkness older than time itself. But it was Catherine's journal, a testament to her descent into madness, that unveiled the true horror that lurked in the shadows. The mask's malevolence, its insidious presence that watched and waited, hungry for souls to claim in a macabre dance of death and rebirth. As the investigation unfolded, a chilling realization took hold. Catherine's death was not a mere accident, but a calculated act of terror that defied mortal understanding. Cardiac arrest brought on by extreme fear, a heart silenced by the touch of something beyond this world. Surveillance footage from a vigilant neighbor revealed a figure cloaked in darkness, a specter wearing Catherine's form like a twisted mockery of life. The missing mask, a phantom in the night, eluding capture as it sought its next unwitting victim in a deadly game of shadows and whispers. Months later, a vintage shop across the country bore witness to the mask's return, a silent harbinger of doom that passed from hand to hand, leaving a trail of fear and death in its wake. The cycle continued, unbroken by time or distance, a malevolent force bound by ancient vows and insatiable hunger. The detective, haunted by the specter of Catherine's fate, kept her journal closed, a grim reminder of the darkness that lurked in the corners of the world. At night, she would awaken to a sense of unease, a feeling of being watched by unseen eyes that hungered for her soul. And so the mask remained at large, a whisper in the wind, a shadow in the night, waiting for the moment when it would find its next victim, its next vessel to fill with dread and despair. The cycle continued, a dance of death and rebirth that echoed through the ages, a grim reminder of the eternal struggle between light and darkness, between life and death. Story 22, the gentle current of the river whispered softly that morning, the water mirroring the stillness of the world around it. The lone fisherman, lost in his thoughts, was almost oblivious to the sight of a lone suitcase bobbing near the shore. Initially dismissing it as mere debris, his curiosity was piqued as he approached and caught a whiff of a pungent, oppressive odor that hung heavy in the air. The suitcase was bound by chains, its corners tinged with the rust of time and exposure to the elements. When the authorities pried it open, it revealed a macabre sight, not clothes, but strands of hair, fingers frozen in a haunting grip. At the bottom lay a chilling note that sent shivers down their spines. This isn't the first. Detective Sarah Mercer, her face veiled by a delicate handkerchief against the overpowering scent, surveyed the grim scene before her. The victim, a woman in her mid-30s named Catherine Walsh, lay before them, her dark hair and once pale skin now marked by the touch of the water. The meticulous work of the medical examiner painted a somber picture of the care taken in preparing the victim. Manicured nails, freshly styled hair, clad in expensive attire. She wasn't discarded here, Mercer mused, her gaze fixed on the rippling water caressing the muddy banks. She was arranged, presented. Catherine Walsh, a successful real estate agent known for her expertise in selling high-end properties, led a life of solitude in an upscale neighborhood. Divorced, childless, her colleagues painted a portrait of a woman driven by ambition, meticulous in her ways and fiercely private. Her disappearance, reported by her concerned assistant when she failed to attend a crucial showing for affluent clients, raised red flags in the tightly knit community. As the investigation delved deeper, Walsh's meticulously kept home revealed an unsettling perfection, a place for everything, and everything in its place. Yet a faint anomaly lurked in her home office, a drawer slightly ajar, revealing a leather-bound journal. The last entry etched in the pages hinted at a lurking danger. He's watching again. Same car, different plates. The digital footprint left behind by Walsh unveiled a haunting pattern, mysterious emails, all bearing the ominous message, "I see your perfection," arriving like clockwork from unknown senders. Her online searches for security systems and self-defense items wove a chilling narrative that echoed the careful arrangement of her body at the crime scene. "Our perpetrator is methodical," Mercer whispered to her partner, the weight of the revelation settling between them. This was no crime of passion. It was a meticulously orchestrated ritual. A breakthrough emerged from an unexpected source, a local pawn shop owner recognizing Walsh's distinctive emerald necklace among the pawned items. The culprit, Michael Linden, a nondescript maintenance worker, came into focus through surveillance footage linking him to Walsh's residence. His modest abode harbored a sinister secret, walls adorned with stolen photographs of Walsh and other women, each sharing a haunting resemblance. Some faces were marked with a decisive stroke of red. Walsh was the third victim in his twisted collection. In Linden's closet, hidden behind a false wall, lay a shrine of obsession, personal items meticulously gathered from each victim, a testament to his meticulous study of their lives. The interrogation room turned icy as Linden, his demeanor eerily composed, confessed to his crimes. "They were imperfect," he stated coldly. "They projected perfection, but I saw their flaws. Catherine's desk drawer was always a mess. She missed a spot with her lipstick. Her perfection was a facade." Unraveling the threads of Linden's obsession led investigators to remote locations where suitcases holding the remains of 2 more victims were recovered. Real estate agents like Walsh, who presented themselves as paragons of meticulousness and perfection, had fallen prey to Linden's delusion. As the trial unfolded, Linden's impassive facade cracked not once, even as the prosecution laid bare his chilling modus operandi. Each woman became a canvas for his twisted artistry, meticulously groomed before the final act of violence. The judge's gavel fell, sealing Linden's fate with a sentence of life imprisonment without parole. For Detective Mercer, the case concluded officially, but shadows of unanswered questions lingered in the air. What inner demons drove Linden to fixate on these specific women? What imperfections within himself did he seek to erase through his gruesome acts? The river continued its tranquil journey downstream, carrying away the remnants of a dark chapter. Yet in the quiet of the precinct, on Mercer's desk lay the eerie reminders of Lyndon's meticulous obsession, a stark reminder that beneath the veneer of normalcy, darkness can lurk, and the most dangerous predators often wear masks of normalcy, waiting patiently for the moment a flaw exposes their true nature. Story 23. The new inhabitants brushed it off as mere peeling wallpaper, but as they delicately removed the layers, a hidden tale unraveled before their eyes. Etched in ink, repeated endlessly, was a name. The same name, saturating every inch of the wall, etched in a frenzied, uneven scrawl. It did not belong to the previous inhabitants. It was absent from any official documents. Yet upon scouring the name online, they stumbled upon a solitary result, a missing persons report from decades past. And the most chilling revelation, the woman in the photograph bore an uncanny resemblance to the one who had sold them the house. Michael and Sarah Klein had no immediate plans to renovate the Victorian-era dwelling. The enchanting old abode came at a surprisingly affordable price, and the former owner, a reserved, sophisticated woman with dark hair streaked silver, seemed eager to part with it, citing a move across the country. The couple had been captivated by the home's allure, its intricate woodwork and lofty ceilings whispering tales of bygone days. It all commenced with a modest water stain in the master bedroom. Sarah spotted a yellowish blemish spreading across the floral wallpaper. When Michael probed it with his fingertips, the paper yielded, unveiling a hidden layer beneath. Intrigued, they cautiously peeled back the damaged portion. The initial layer unveiled outdated paisley patterns from what they presumed to be the 1970s. Below that, striped paper from an earlier era. But as they persisted, an unexpected find emerged in the third layer down. Writing, dark ink against faded beige paper. Not aimless scrawls, but a name, Elena Winters, repeated incessantly, the handwriting growing more frantic and erratic across the wall. "Who is Elena Winters?" Sarah murmured, her fingers tracing the frenzied script. The revelation left them unsettled. That evening, Michael sat at their kitchen counter, laptop aglow, scouring property records. The house had changed ownership numerous times over the years. No trace of an Elena Winters surfaced in any documentation. The woman who had handed them the keys was identified as Margaret Cavendish. Sarah joined him, clutching a mug of coffee. Try searching just the name. The online hunt yielded scant results until they chanced upon an archived newspaper article, digitally preserved from microfiche. Elena Winters, age 27, reported missing during the winter season. The monochrome photograph depicted a young woman with dark locks and distinct eyes that mirrored those of Margaret Cavendish, the woman who had sold them the house. "This article dates back 30 years, Michael remarked, his voice barely audible over the refrigerator's hum. Margaret would be the right age now, but Sarah swallowed hard. The missing woman's fate remains unresolved, no body recovered, no suspects identified. Their inquisitiveness morphed into an all-consuming fixation. Sarah reached out to the former homeowners, retracing their steps through county archives. The renovation grind to a halt as they devoted their evenings to this impromptu investigation. They learned that Margaret Cavendish had possessed the house for a mere 7 months before passing it on to them, a departure from the elaborate paperwork and inspections they had endured. The retired detective assigned to the cold case had long retired. Michael managed to locate him, prompting a trip down memory lane as he recounted the investigation. Elena Winters was reported missing by her roommate. No signs of a struggle at her apartment, her car abandoned near the highway. The case went cold swiftly, no witnesses, no evidence of foul play, vanished into thin air. Michael hesitated before inquiring, "Did you ever interview a Margaret Cavendish?" A pregnant pause ensued. "No recollection of that name. Why do you ask?" upon sharing their findings and presenting him with juxtaposed photos of both women, the retired detective vowed to make inquiries. In a matter of days, a current detective reached out, seeking permission to scrutinize the wall, their abode transformed into an active crime scene. Forensic teams meticulously documented and extracted segments of the wallpaper. Analysis divulged that the ink traced back around 30 years. Graphologists juxtaposed the wall inscriptions with samples of Aliner's penmanship from aged journals provided by her kin. The outcomes proved inconclusive. Meanwhile, Sarah unearthed a concealed compartment beneath the bedroom closet's floorboards. Nestled within lay a driver's license attributed to Aliner Winters alongside various identification cards bearing assorted names. All featured the same visage with subtle discrepancies, varying hair hues, eyewear, expressions. The ultimate ID, Margaret Cavendish, matched their house vendor. Attempts to locate Margaret using the given forwarding address proved futile, her phone number defunct. The bank account that received their payment had been closed. Margaret Cavendish had vanished, akin to Aliner Winters decades prior. Then came the revelation that irrevocably shifted the course of the inquiry. DNA examination of hair strands salvaged from deep within the wall cavity aligned with Aliner Winters. However, fingerprints lifted from the inscriptions corresponded to a distinct profile, an individual named Rebecca Eldridge, a psychiatric patient institutionalized shortly after Aliner's disappearance. Rebecca Eldridge had been diagnosed with severe dissociative identity disorder. Her medical archives unveiled a chilling detail, one of her documented alter egos identified as Aliner. The investigation unveiled that Rebecca had been Aliner's childhood companion, fixated on her to the point of emulation. When Aliner rebuffed her increasingly unsettling advances, something within Rebecca fractured. She assumed Aliner's identity both literally and figuratively, and fabricated an intricate web of personas to sustain the facade. The scribbled name epitomized Rebecca's desperate bid to retain a grip on reality, to recollect who she truly was beneath the assumed facades. The wall had evolved into both confession and incarceration, a tangible manifestation of her splintered psyche. Sarah and Michael observed from their front veranda as forensic teams excavated specific sections of their backyard, guided by ground-penetrating radar that had detected anomalies below the surface. The cold case had abruptly heated up. The remnants recovered from beneath the garden belonged to Aliner Winters. Rebecca Eldridge, known to Michael and Sarah as Margaret Cavendish, was eventually apprehended while attempting to cross the border under yet another alias. Confronted with irrefutable evidence, the persona presenting as Margaret crumbled, paving the way for another persona to surface, one who admitted to slaying Aliner in a fit of jealousy. The names on the wall had functioned as both a memorial and a manifestation of guilt, inscribed by a fractured psyche, striving to cling to shards of truth despite itself. For Aliner's kin, justice arrived 3 decades belatedly. For Michael and Sarah, their idyllic abode became notorious, a footnote in true crime annals, forever remembered as the residence where the walls themselves confessed to a heinous act. Story 24, The Enigmatic Manor. The new homeowners brushed off the ancient intercom system's late-night crackling as a quirky relic of the past. The old system had been rewired but seemingly forgotten over time. However, one fateful night, curiosity got the best of the husband and he pressed the button. A whisper, almost ghostly, crackled through the speaker, asking, "Why did you come back?" Startled, the husband recoiled, his hands trembling. His wife, standing behind him, denied ever uttering those words. The Victorian manor stood majestically amidst ancient oak trees, its worn exterior hiding a modern interior that the couple, Daniel and Meredith Parker, had fallen in love with. Despite the nervous demeanor of the real estate agent during the walkthrough, the Parkers had managed to snag the property at an unexpectedly reasonable price. The intercom system, a vintage feature linking all rooms, had charmed the history-loving couple. Detective Sarah Reeves arrived at the property, the gravel crunching beneath her unmarked vehicle's tires. The call had come in as a simple break-in, but the dispatcher's tone hinted at a deeper, untold story. Daniel Parker, visibly shaken, welcomed Detective Reeves at the door. He led her through the grand foyer, explaining, "It all began with the intercom static, then whispers, and finally full sentences. My wife thought I was imagining things until she heard it too." In the living room, Meredith sat stiffly on an old sofa, her hands tightly gripping an untouched mug. Without preamble, she disclosed, "We found something hidden behind the wall." Daniel wanted to expand the pantry, and when he took down the wall. Her voice faltered, revealing the shocking discovery, a small, deteriorating journal wrapped in plastic. Detective Reeves, wearing gloves, delicately opened the brittle pages, revealing the elegant yet frantic handwriting of Alina, the previous owner. Alina's entries hinted at her fear of her husband Vincent's malevolent intentions. "The last entry was dated 30 years ago," Daniel added, and then silence. The previous owners mentioned they bought the house from an elderly man who had moved to a retirement community. The investigation unveiled the dark truth of Vincent and Alina Blackwood's past ownership. Vincent had sold the house shortly after Alina's disappearance without any trace of her whereabouts. Forensic examination uncovered human remains buried beneath the garden shed, confirming the suspicions. The engraved wedding band found among the remains bore the haunting inscription, "To Alina, my eternal love." As the case against Vincent Blackwood unfolded, his chilling confession revealed a web of deceit and manipulation. Vincent confessed to murdering Alina, driven by her incessant presence through the intercom. His calculated actions and decades-long deception led to a swift guilty plea at trial. The judge noted the meticulous planning and prolonged deception, delivering a harsh sentence. Daniel and Meredith, unable to bear the weight of the house's dark history, sold the property after holding a poignant memorial for Alina in the restored garden. The intercom system, a conduit for long-buried secrets, was removed by the new owners during renovations. Workers reported eerie static and whispers during the removal, attributing it to mere interference. Detective Reeves revisited the Blackwood case file before its archival, pondering the house's eerie ability to unearth its secrets across time. The justice system finally caught up with Vincent Blackwood, thanks to Alina's haunting presence echoing through the halls. Local law enforcement dubbed it the house that answered back. Occasionally, Detective Reeves would pass by the property on her way home, listening for whispers carried on the wind, a reminder of the enigmatic manor's haunting past. Story 25. The aged apartment exuded a sense of history, its walls holding secrets whispered by time. The heating system let out a weary groan, the pipes rattling in a familiar rhythm. It was all part of the building's character. Or so she reassured herself until that fateful moment. A voice, barely audible yet undeniably distinct, drifted through the ancient vents, sending a chill down her spine. It was not the typical background chatter of neighbors or the creaking of old infrastructure. This voice was different. It was calling out to her, whispering her name with a haunting intimacy. Intrigued and unnerved, she leaned closer, pressing her ear against the cool metal grate. A sudden draft of icy air brushed past her cheek, and then almost teasingly the voice spoke again, "I know you can hear me." Detective Morgan Shaw stood in the center of the empty apartment, a silent observer amidst the organized chaos of the forensic team buzzing around her. Camera flashes captured every detail as they meticulously documented the eerie scene. The missing woman, Alina Reeves, had vanished without a trace until a noxious odor alerted the building manager to her absence. What they uncovered within the ventilation system defied logic and reason. She claimed to hear voices through the vents. Officer Patel recited from his notebook, breaking the silence. But the building management dismissed her complaints, attributing them to the quirks of an old heating system. Kneeling by the vent, Shaw noticed the telltale signs of struggle etched around its edges. The deep, desperate scratches spoke of a frantic attempt to break free, as if someone trapped inside had clawed at the metal in a desperate bid for escape. Alina Reeves, a beloved kindergarten teacher with a penchant for nurturing both plants and young minds, had seemingly fallen prey to an unseen malevolence that lurked within the shadows of her own home. Her absence had sent ripples of concern through her community, from her worried students to her grief-stricken sister, who recounted Alina's escalating paranoia in the days leading up to her disappearance. The apartment, once a sanctuary of warmth and familiarity, now seemed to hold a sinister aura. The meticulously made bed, the abandoned coffee mug in the sink, the chair positioned beneath the vent, as if awaiting a silent listener, all whispered of a presence unseen but keenly felt. As the investigation unfolded, a chilling tapestry of evidence began to unravel. Fibers from Alina's favorite cardigan entangled in the vent grating, a foreign fingerprint on the inside of the vent cover, and haunting audio recordings from Alina's own phone, capturing the ghostly whispers that had tormented her fragile mind. A history of unsettling incidents within the building emerged, with past tenants recounting tales of voices in the walls, unexplained phenomena, and a pervasive sense of being watched. The enigmatic building superintendent, Harold Weber, appeared innocuous on the surface, but a subtle shift in his demeanor betrayed a deeper knowledge of the building's dark underbelly. Forensic revelations of a hidden passage behind a loose tile in Alina's bathroom unveiled a nightmarish truth, a clandestine network of tunnels that snaked through the building's structure, offering a voyeuristic vantage point into the lives of its unsuspecting inhabitants. The discovery of a trove of personal artifacts in Weber's possession painted a chilling portrait of obsession and possession. Weber's meticulously organized collection of audio recordings and voyeuristic photographs revealed a twisted obsession with Alina and previous tenants, a warped fantasy of intimacy cultivated through walls and vents. His serene demeanor in the face of arrest and interrogation only heightened the sense of malevolence that clung to him like a shroud. The truth of Alina's fate emerged, painting a harrowing picture of a woman lured into the bowels of the building, drugged and disoriented, her final moments a desperate attempt to follow the siren call of whispered promises that led her deeper into the labyrinthine passages. As the trial unfolded, Weber's facade of calm detachment crumbled in the face of damning evidence, his delusions of symbiosis with the building laid bare for the world to see. The jury's swift verdict of guilt did little to quell the lingering unease that permeated the once haunted apartment building. Today, the building stands as a hollow shell, its walls echoing with the phantom whispers of a predator long since vanquished. Despite attempts at renovation and renewal, the specter of Harold Weber's crimes lingers in the cold drafts that carry voices, in the groans of the heating system, in the rattling pipes that seem to speak a language of their own. And though new residents come and go, the building remembers its secrets whispered in the shadows, a chilling reminder of the darkness that once dwelled within its walls. Story 26: The Mystery of the Attic Doll. In the depths of the attic, nestled beneath a worn and forgotten blanket, a discovery awaited. A porcelain doll, its delicate features frozen in time, with eyes of a deep, mysterious blue that seemed to hold secrets untold. Sarah and Michael, a young couple who had recently acquired the old Victorian house, stumbled upon this eerie relic, unaware of the unsettling events it would set in motion. At first, they brushed off the doll as just another dusty antique, a relic of the past. Little did they know its presence would soon cast a shadow over their tranquil lives. That night, a strange heaviness lingered in the air, and an eerie silence crept through the house, unsettling in its stillness. And when morning dawned, the doll was no longer in the attic where they had left it. It now sat ominously at the foot of their bed, a silent sentinel watching over them. Sarah and Michael had been drawn to the house's history, its ornate woodwork whispering tales of bygone eras and hidden mysteries. But they could never have imagined that they would become entwined in a dark chapter of that history, one marked by tragedy and inexplicable occurrences. Detective Rachel Winters, a seasoned investigator with a keen eye for detail, was called to the scene on a crisp autumn morning. The master bedroom revealed a chilling sight: the female victim, her body contorted in a macabre pose, her eyes wide with fear. Nearby, the male victim lay as if in desperate flight, his expression frozen in terror. As Detective Winters meticulously examined the scene, a sense of unease settled upon her. The positioning of the bodies, the lack of evidence pointing to an intruder, all hinted at a malevolent presence lingering in the shadows. The house itself seemed to hold its breath, as if waiting for the truth to be unveiled. The investigation unfolded with a series of puzzling clues and unsettling revelations. Neighbors spoke of strange occurrences: a shadow glimpsed in an upstairs window, the faint echo of a child's laughter in the dead of night. Forensic analysis uncovered traces of vintage fabrics, reminiscent of antique doll clothing, scattered throughout the house, with a peculiar concentration in the attic and around the victims. Delving into the house's dark past, Detective Winters unearthed a pattern of tragedy and mystery. Previous owners had met untimely ends under inexplicable circumstances, their deaths shrouded in whispers of the supernatural. A newspaper clipping revealed the tragic tale of a doll maker who had once called the house his home, his final creation a haunting replica of his deceased daughter. As the investigation deepened, a sinister connection emerged. Each victim had sought to alter the attic space, unknowingly awakening a malevolent force tied to the dollmaker's cursed creations. Sarah and Michael, in their innocent renovations, had unwittingly disturbed a slumbering evil that now sought to claim them. In a chilling discovery, hidden photographs revealed the doll's sinister history, its presence captured in moments of eerie movement and inexplicable shifts in position. Invisible handprints traced a path from the attic to the master bedroom, a spectral trail of dread leading to the heart of the mystery. A chance encounter with a distant relative of the dollmaker unveiled dark family secrets, a legacy of forbidden rituals and arcane knowledge, whispered through generations. The line between the living and the dead blurred, as the doll's malevolent spirit sought to ensnare those who dared to uncover its secrets. With each revelation, the case grew more enigmatic, defying logical explanation and confounding the investigators. Detective Winters, haunted by the specter of the doll and its chilling legacy, made a fateful decision to keep it as evidence, unaware of the darkness that now shadowed her every step. But fate had other plans. In a twist of inexplicable events, the doll vanished from its secure confinement, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions and unspoken fears. Detective Winters, her memory clouded by a mysterious lapse, found herself at a loss, grasping at fragments of a reality slipping away. The house, tainted by its tragic history, passed into new hands, its secrets buried beneath layers of dust and neglect. The attic, once a place of hidden horrors, stood empty, a silent witness to the darkness that had unfolded within its walls. Yet whispers persisted among the neighbors, tales of a shadowy figure glimpsed in the attic window and the faint laughter of a child echoing through the night. The doll, lost to the depths of the unknown, remained a ghostly presence in the collective memory of those who had crossed its path. As the years passed, the house bore witness to new lives and new stories, each shadowed by the lingering specter of the attic doll. Detective Winters, haunted by the unsolved mystery that had eluded her grasp, retired into the quiet shadows of obscurity, carrying with her a single, haunting memento of a case never truly closed. And so the tale of the attic doll faded into legend, a whispered memory of a darkness that defied explanation, a mystery that slept, restless and eternal, in the hidden recesses of the old Victorian house. Story 27, The Unsettling Discovery. Renovations always have a way of unraveling the mysteries hidden within old homes. As Sarah and Michael delved into the restoration of their newly acquired Victorian-era house, they found more than just dusty relics and worn-out trinkets. Tangled amidst the floorboards lay a folded letter, its edges frayed with age, its ink faded but its warning clear: "Don't trust the one who knocked." Startled by the ominous message, the couple froze as 3 sharp knocks reverberated through the silent corridors of their home. Goosebumps prickled on their skin, a shiver running down their spines. The unexpected discovery cast a shadow over their once exciting renovation project, plunging them into a chilling mystery. Detective Alina Reid, a seasoned investigator with a keen eye for the unusual, arrived at the scene with her partner. The floorboards gaping open like a wound, revealing the dark void beneath, beckoned for answers. With steady hands marked by years of handling evidence, Reid carefully retrieved the cryptic note, mindful of preserving any traces of the unknown sender. Sarah and Michael recounted the eerie knocking sound, their faces etched with genuine fear. Background checks on the couple yielded no red flags, just a pair of newlyweds with stable lives and a shared dream of restoring a piece of history. But the house itself harbored a more intricate past, tinged with secrets waiting to be unearthed. Previously owned by the reclusive Hargrove family, the house stood silent for years after the passing of its last inhabitant, Margaret Hargrove. Neighbors spoke of a kind but solitary widow, her life shrouded in quietude. Yet the discovery of the hidden letter hinted at a darker narrative lurking beneath the surface. Forensic analysis dated the letter back 2 decades, its worn script hinting at desperation and fear. Margaret, in her twilight years, had penned the warning, a silent plea for caution. Reid delved deeper into the history of the Hargroves, unearthing whispers of unpaid debts and shadowy figures from the past. A former student of Margaret's late husband, Franklin, shed light on his descent into paranoia, a gradual unraveling that hinted at a looming menace. Franklin's refusal to settle his debts with a mysterious collector painted a grim picture of a man haunted by his past transgressions. The breakthrough came with a clandestine interview with Margaret's frail sister, whose fading memories unveiled a chilling truth. The collector, identified as Victor Mercer, had cast a long shadow over the Hargroves, his presence a specter of fear and dread. Franklin's final act of defiance had set in motion a chain of events that led to a dark secret buried beneath the house. As Reed and her team meticulously combed through the hidden recesses of the home, the truth slowly unraveled. Beneath the foundation, a grim discovery awaited: the skeletal remains of Victor Mercer, a grim reminder of past sins left unpunished. The walls whispered of betrayal and fear, of a life cut short by greed and desperation. Margaret's diaries, unearthed from the attic's shadows, painted a harrowing portrait of a woman haunted by the echoes of the past. The 3 knocks that plagued her nights, a chilling reminder of the price paid for secrets buried deep. With the pieces of the puzzle falling into place, justice, though belated, found its way to the forgotten souls entwined in the house's history. Sarah and Michael, unable to bear the weight of the revelations, chose to part ways with the haunting abode, leaving it to the mercy of time and whispers of the past. The house stood silent, a solemn sentinel of bygone days, its walls echoing with the phantom knocks of a story left untold. Local tales whispered of spectral echoes in the dead of night, of a presence that lingered in the empty corridors, a reminder of the cautionary note left behind. The letter, now a relic of a bygone era, remained locked away in the confines of evidence storage, its message a haunting refrain: "Don't trust the one who knocked." Margaret's cryptic warning, echoing through the ages, a testament to the enduring mysteries that linger in the shadows of our past. Detective Reed closed the case, her final report a testament to the enigmatic nature of human secrets and the relentless passage of time. Some stories, she mused, are destined to remain shrouded in mystery, their truths buried beneath layers of forgotten whispers and untold truths.